Board of Supervisors to order. Roll call, please. Mr. Veeder.
Leyland.
Here.
Little.
Here.
Jelka.
Here.
White.
Here.
Schwartz.
Here. Please join us for a moment of silence to reflect on today's actions. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll have the agenda as received.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to public comments. Anybody from the public wish to comment on something that is not an agenda item? Seeing none, moving on to claims and payments.
The total comes out to $261,822.81. The bigger ones on here, secondary roads for $97,000, IT for $27,000. Everything else looks normal. So
Secondary roads, what was that? Rock, more rock?
it's a combination of a lot of things. Fuel. You got
That's why.
yeah. Plumbing at the Gilbertville shop was a bigger one. Salt was a big item there.
All right, any more questions or discussion? We have a motion?
So
Okay.
Second.
So been moved and seconded. Roll call, please. Mr. Veeder.
Leyland.
yes.
Little.
Yes.
Jelka.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes. Moving on to project updates from department heads and elected officials.
Morning, Ryan.
Morning, Board. Brian Brennan, Assistant County Engineer. We had a pretty good week out on the Cedar Wapsie Bridge last week. There was a little over 200 yards of concrete poured between two different piers and one of the abutments, so seeing good progress out there. Some of that will be slowed a little by some of the weather this week, but they are continuing. Other than that, our secondary roads crews are back out cutting some brush this week, and we'll kind of see what weather brings for later this week.
What's the completion date on that bridge?
It would be sometime in our construction season for calendar 20. So it'd be sometime,
This year?
yeah, summer, fall this year, just depending on how they work through the winter and how much work they get done this winter.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Anyone else today? All right, moving on to the minutes approved from the February 4th and February 6th meetings.
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. Next, we will move on to the consent agenda. This will be approved with a single resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Is there anything anybody wishes to discuss out of the consent agenda? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please. Mr. Veeder.
Little.
Yes.
Jelka.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes. All right, moving on to contracts and agreements. A resolution that the change order received from Kidder Construction, Waterloo, Iowa, in the amount of $9,544.03 for additional sheet rock work and additional VCT tile replacement for the new VA center at Pinecrest be approved as recommended by Roy Giving, Maintenance Superintendent.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions?
Rory, you addressed most of this in the email. I don't know if you wanted to, because of the change order, if you wanted to make a comment or two.
Good morning, Board. Rory Giving, Maintenance Superintendent. This was, the sheetrock was primarily behind the old kitchen cabinets that were removed. We found that sheetrock was all deteriorated, as well as lower sections of a few of the restrooms in those areas were in pretty bad shape. So we made the decision to go ahead and cut those sections out and get them replaced. With regards to the floor tile in the hallway. We were optimistic at the beginning of the project that that tile would buff out, and once we put our new LED lighting in there, we quickly realized that you could, it did not buff out as well as we had hoped. So we made the decision to go ahead and get that replaced along with the rest of the tile. So in hopes of cutting a few corners, it just didn't pan out the way we'd liked.
Thank you.
Is that kind of some of the final things then?
Yeah, the only thing that we really will have left to bring in front of the board at a later time will be the new canopy and the sign for the VA Community Center outside. And so we were working on getting costs put together on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Veeder.
Trelka,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes. Moving on to other business. This is a motion that the personal requisition for equipment operator IB, this is a full-time replacement effective February 11th, 2020, as recommended by Catherine Nichols, County Engineer.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion is approved. Next is a motion that the personal requisition for 2 office specialists, these are full-time replacements, starting no sooner than March 2nd, 2020, as recommended by Rita Schmidt, County Treasurer.
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is approved. Next is a motion that the 2019 Blackhawk County wage listing be received and placed on file, and direct the county auditor to publish in the Waterloo Courier.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is approved. And next is a motion to direct the finance director to advertise for a public hearing on the proposed Blackhawk County budget for the fiscal year 2020-21 to be held on, this will be March 5th instead of March 3rd, this so that everybody can attend in person. 2020 at 9:05 a.m. in boardroom 201 of the Blackhawk County Courthouse.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Next, we will move on to a work session. Discussion, possible action, consideration of all aspects of the fiscal year, the 21 Blackhawk County budget. I believe we are going to start things off with Spear Financial.
Good morning, Board. Maggie Berger from Spear Financial. I have with me my colleague John Murphy as well. I believe you've been in some discussions about the potential or possibility in calendar year 2020 of doing some general obligation bonding. A couple of different subjects have come up. I believe there is a road bridge project that potentially could be bonded for. I believe also we've been notified of possible building renovations. So we just want to kind of walk through, answer any questions that you have about bonding. I know that we've done some recent bonding in the fall, but it was not bonding that you folks at the supervisors level are paying for with the debt service levy. Yeah, those are being cared for and taken care of by not only the communications group, but also the landfill or Blackhawk County Solid Waste. So just a little bit, I think we've run some $3 million, $4 million, and $5 million schedules. I remind everybody that a public hearing is just a public hearing. So if you do move forward at this time or in the near future with a public hearing for general obligation borrowing, you're not locking yourself into doing any borrowing. All you're doing is locking yourself into the authority that up to that amount that you choose, whether that's $4 million or $5 million, that's the amount you cannot exceed unless you have another public hearing. Roads and bridges can be essential county purposes, which means they are 4 and 20-day notices. Very simply, it is something that you agree as a board. It's your discretion only. The board in the past has done a substantial amount of road and bridge projects through the ECP, and the ECP, the Essential County Purpose, is partially determined by a code section that was amended a number of years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago at this point in time, that allows for you to borrow money essentially for roads and bridges if they create wealth, if they lead to job creation. So we would recognize that the majority of the roads that you're considering as large projects are going to fall into that category. Right now, the engineer's office, the finance department is working on getting all of the documentation that is needed for that, for, I believe, the big road and bridge project that's been discussed. So that should get you on the way. The other part of the discussion really that we wanted to have was that to be able to levy for debt in fiscal year 21, so if you wanted to include a debt service levy payment for whatever debt you think you're going to borrow for in fiscal year 21, meaning making an interest payment in December, a principal and interest payment next June, you do need to have a public hearing ahead of time with a pre-levy resolution. That is required by the code section. Again, what you would be then required to bond for would be whatever that amount is that the pre-levy is in. So even if you held a hearing, let's say for $5 million, your pre-levy resolution, let's say, was just for $500,000, all you have to bond for would be $500,000, because bond counsel is going to require that you bond for the $500,000 because you're going to be collecting those dollars from the taxpayers to pay the debt service levy. But you would have anywhere between the $500,000 to the $5 million that you could potentially bond for. The other part of it is to have a public hearing and a pre-levy authorization. You do only need to have one hearing at this time. Subsequent and more hearings can come down the road before you would borrow money, and that could be for other projects that are identified throughout your budget process, other projects that potentially come up. And those projects, you can have additional hearings and still use that $500,000, let's just say, as authorization for the pre-levy. You just have to have one hearing now. So the majority of clients that we work with do just have one hearing on what we would call the simplest public hearing, and that is roads, bridges, streets, sidewalks, and we're talking to cities. That's really the simplest public hearing to get out of the way. Other public hearings can come, again, down the road before you would borrow. It also is in your best interest to consider when you do borrowing that you're borrowing for everything that you have needs for at that time that you do believe you want to borrow for. There is cost of issuance that goes along with every single borrowing. And so we want to make sure that we are being conscious of those costs of issuance, not only our fee, but legal fees. There's a ratings fee to Moody's. So those are the types of fees that we want to try to bring down to one time. Maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once every other year. Things that, we're lumping things together. A lot of people ask the question, how long do we have to spend the bond proceeds? From the day you take possession of the bond proceeds, which is our closing date, you have 2 years to spend the bond proceeds. So you have about 24 months to spend those proceeds that you've identified for. The one thing, if there are weather delays, things like that, there are opportunities to ask the IRS for an extension of maybe 6 months up to possibly 12 months. But really, basing it, we should say that we're going to spend those proceeds within 24 months. You also have the opportunity on, let's say, roads and bridges to not only just use bonding, but you would have the opportunity to use some cash as well on that project. So if there was a combination of cash and some borrowing for a road and bridge project, you would do that. I know that the county is discussing that because they've got some cash receipts that have come in. And so those are the types of things you can do a combination on that type of borrowing for roads and bridges. Gets a little trickier on the renovation of a building, renovations or improvements within buildings. There's some limitations of really the project size is all that you can really borrow for. You can't influx cash on that, and it's just really the way the code section is written. From a bonding standpoint, interest rates are very low. You saw that in October when we were working with the landfill and the communications committee. So interest rates still remain very, very low. Now would be the time, if you are considering doing any bonding, to do that. With that being said, I would, as your financial advisor, one of the things that we would say is we're not saying that you shouldn't use some cash. Maybe there's a reason to use some of that cash, but you also could look at it from the perspective that while interest rates are low, you may want to borrow for the project and use your cash on other projects that come down the line. The other thing to remember is there are going to be some small projects that come up, maybe $200,000-$300,000 that maybe you don't want to borrow for, and that may be a better opportunity to use cash that way. We also consider that there are certain things you cannot bond for without a referendum. So there are things that if you get down the road and you decide, yes, we would love to borrow for this, but really it goes to a referendum and you're like, we don't really want to have a referendum on that, that may be an opportunity to use some of those cash. So I think we're just talking to say, let's consider all the options of what you think you may want to borrow for, even now and in the future, the next 3 to 5 years, because that may help you align with where you want to borrow and then maybe where you want to spend cash now and in the future. So what kind of questions do you all have?
Well, and that was really what I was thinking of, Maggie, when I asked if you, and thank you again for coming today. We were in, as you know, a very strong position last year with our reserves, and we had a lot of discussion among this board at what was a proper amount for us to have and to use to buy down the tax rate for the most part. And I think we were kind of all over the board at different times at what that number was. Because of the sale of Country View, we're even in a stronger position because of, from our reserve standpoint. So I think it was really just understanding as much as we can about the tools, knowing bonding plays a good role, a part in that. Having, we talked about capital planning and strategic planning. That's something that we want to do that we haven't taken on yet as far as from the county as a whole. But looking at the whole picture and knowing then, I think we got an additional project this year that some of us had no idea, I guess, what the price tag was or was going to be. So looking at how we work with that project as well. So it's just understanding, I guess, as much as possible what those tools are for us and what makes the most sense for us and where those reserves should be or could be. Knowing, we said we've had discussions on not having too much or what is too much and what's not enough. I know there were years we said we didn't have 25%. I think back to 2013 is when we started having more than 25% reserves.
Right.
And so it's, getting that information from you. I wasn't sure about funding a building either. I know we've had some discussion on that whether or not that's a good use of our bonding capacity, but that we can do it. Sounds like.
Yeah, up to, I believe, $1.2 million is what your limitation is, and that's based on population, so that's in the code section that certain populations of counties can go and borrow up to, but again, that has to be the whole all-in project cost. So $1.2 million is what you could borrow for a building, construction, renovation. That would be your cap, and that has to be all in. So that just means that the whole project can't exceed $1.2 million. It can't be 1.3, and we're going to throw $100,000 of cash and bond. Unfortunately, the way that the county statute is written is it has to be an all-in cost. And so you could borrow for $1 million and use $200,000 of cash, but again, it's that $1.2 million number that you cannot exceed without having to go to a referendum. So I don't want to say that there's not the possibility. I don't think that this board is looking at going to a referendum on a project such as that, but I just wanted to note that it's the $1.2 million cap based on your population.
What are the types of projects that require a referendum?
Buildings that exceed that 1.2 million, we've had a few counties that have done, let's say, smaller counties that have done like Veterans Affairs type buildings that are off campus, maybe from their general courthouse area. We've had some secondary roads buildings, obviously, that exceed that. Some large secondary roads building, $4 and $5 and $6 million roads, buildings, because maybe it's a smaller county and they keep everything kind of in one area of the county. So those types of things are what it would force your hand to go out to a referendum on for a county purpose.
James, and I don't, just for a recap, as far as where our reserves are now, currently, I know you mentioned 19 million in an email, but there was like 2.4 million projects.
Yeah. So 2.4 were carryover or carry forward funds that are earmarked for grants that we've received that we haven't yet spent. The 60/40 account for the sheriff's is in there. Things that are assigned, but yet they're kind of marked unassigned. And then we've already talked about the 1.2 million that's kind of coming out already. So looking at a fund balance, we do have that 19 million in there, but I mean, you're already looking at, 3.6 that's already essentially set aside. So.
And that would take us to probably, what, about 40% or 37? I know
Right,
we
yep,
look at this year's
yeah.
budget and where we have to be. And I hate to say hindsight's 20/20, but even looking at the $1 million we used really last year that was of reserves, when you start seeing uses and projects and years now, like we're kind of have projects we want to do and considering whether or not we can, then that becomes, important you want to keep the reserves strong, but not have too many. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, so we've kind of used Moody's rating services, Moody's Investor Services, at a rating agency, as a guideline in the past, and you've been rated with them, for many, many years now. They have different levels. If you're under 25% reserves to revenues or expenses, then you probably are going to fall into their possibly like single A to lower AA category. The higher the reserve level, I will be very honest, Moody's likes cash. And the reason they like cash is that you can spend cash on anything. There's the ability, and they always, bring up the fact, and it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. They always bring up the fact that how could you operate your county on no tax revenues coming in? We know that tax revenues are slim in certain months right after the beginning of the fiscal year because nobody has paid their property taxes yet. They also get slim in the months of January and February, the revenues coming in, because again, no one's paying their property taxes until they have to pay their property taxes in September and March. So the Moody's always says, it's between 0 and 25, you're kind of on the low end of their scale. 25 to 50, you're on the high end. 50 to 100, you could be potentially creeping into that AAA category if all the other scorecard items are there. And those other scorecard items are debt profile, demographic information, which unfortunately you don't have a lot of control over sometimes, and valuation history, things like that. But they will never shy away from saying they like cash, because cash can be spent on anything at any time. Even in a situation of a natural disaster, you may spend a lot of your cash and you're likely going to get reimbursed, let's say, from a federal program. You may spend that cash, but it could take a year or two to get that cash back. And so that's really why they want to say that you've got cash there to be able to do that and operate the county without any hesitations. It also is very difficult to borrow for operations. And so that's the one thing that we look at is using cash to help offset operational costs. If there's increase in operational costs, borrowing for operations under state code means you're going to be borrowing at a taxable interest rate. And although the taxable and the tax exempt interest rate are very, very low right now, and there is a difference, a taxable interest rate is you're going to bring a whole different group of bidders to the table when you're looking at taxable bonds. That may be to your benefit, that may not be to your benefit. So we try to avoid borrowing, if possible, for operational purposes on a taxable basis. So again, that's where an offset of cash is usually very helpful.
Could you touch on what opportunities might exist for us to refinance some of our current bonds?
Right. So we did take a look at that. You don't have any current bonds that are callable and would save you any money. So you have some very low interest yielding bonds. You've got some bonds that are below 1% right now that are callable, and we're like, I wouldn't touch those. Now you have the opportunity to pay some of those off early. Once you hit the call or the optional redemption date, you do have the opportunity to pay those bonds in whole or in part. And when you pay on those, you pay from the bottom maturity up. The bottom maturity usually has the highest interest rate, and it's out there the longest, so it's accruing the most interest. So you would pay from the bottom up, but at this point in time, we did do a look to see if there was any savings. We would continue to run. There's one that is teetering around 1.8%, and I would tell you that if interest rates continued to drop, I'm not sure that they will, but if they continued to drop and you were looking to bond in the fall, we would still consider looking at that. But at our office, we have a threshold of about 2.5%. So meaning you have got to gain about 2.5% in savings before we're going to recommend it. Otherwise, you're just spending money to really not save money. And that's not of interest to us. When we're looking at it also on a refunding basis, we are doing an all-in cost because it does cost to refund. There is cost of issuance to do that. So we make sure that that 2.5 includes those added cost of issuance to make sure that truly it is a good savings for you at that time. So you fortunately, though, have very low interest rates. Also, some of your recent debts were very short. There was a large debt for communications, towers, radios, things like that that were about 4 or 5 years ago. And we kept that debt very, very short because of all the technology in that debt. We did not want to be having financing that extended the useful life of that product and of those products. So,
And I think you said, James, too, we have 4 or 5 that are going to be falling off in the next. 5 that'll be fall off in the next couple of years.
yeah.
Anyway.
5 falling off at the end of this fiscal year, and then an additional 1 falling off at the next at the end of FY21.
Yeah. And so today, I mean, really what I think we want to talk about was, just the need for, if you believe you're going to do any bonding, if you want to keep that tax levy rate in the debt service similar to where it is, doesn't have to be exactly where it is, but if you want to keep that in a rate without maybe it dropping because you've got new debt coming on, you will need to have a public hearing and do a pre-levy resolution prior to March 31st. Your budget is due by March 31st. You're going to adopt it. You do need to do that by March 31st based on the statute. And again, what that just means is that you are saying we are going to go forward with some kind of bonding towards the fall. And really, like I said, you could hold that public hearing at $5 million. And if your pre-levy resolution is $500,000, that's really all you have to do. We could just do a 1-year note for $500,000 just to cover that. That's what you would, that would be what you would be required to borrow for. But you'd be able to borrow anything up to that $5 million or subsequently any other public hearings that you would hold above and beyond that, again, for maybe other projects, so.
One other question I have is regarding the general fund balance. As far as, is there, I know we've talked about it, that 25% was kind of what we've heard for years. And I think last year, or maybe the last 2 years, we'd heard like 35 to 42 was the GFOA or whatever's recommendation.
Correct.
But, yes, but not that that has to be for us. But what is a good rate for us or a good place for us to be and still be comfortable? I guess that we have like a savings account to hit disasters or special projects or that type of thing.
You're probably, as large of a county that you are, 25% probably is a minimum that you should be looking at. Again, that's running the county for a quarter of the year without hesitation, without there being any problems. GFOA best practices does refer to about 35 to 42%. Moody's goes up as high as 100%, and the people that are carrying 100% fund balances and have good demographics and low debt profiles are the people that have AAA credits. They are the cream of the crop. But that 35 to 42% range, I would say 35 probably for your county is probably a good number to strive for. Now, it may not be that you hit 35 every year. It may be 33, and then it may be up to 34, 5, 36, and then it may fluctuate. The biggest part of the rating process with them is that if you have cash, that you have mindfully thought about how you're going to spend that cash down. So they don't want to just see that you're spending cash every single year to balance your budget on operations and that you would blow through, let's say, $7 to $8 million of cash in 7 or 8 years. That's not what they want to see. They want to see that you're spending that cash on maybe one-time projects, like remodelings of buildings, like, roads and bridges that we've spent it, and maybe you intend to build that cash back up or not. We have the proceeds from Country View. So it just kind of depends on where you want to go. But we do remind everyone that while it may take years to build that up, you can spend it very quickly, and it may take years again to build it back up. And so that's really where they want to have that discussion is, how quickly do you intend to build that cash back up? Do you intend to build it? And did you use it for operations because you just can't balance your budget that way? Or was it for a one-time project that you thought through and said, yep, this is how we're going to spend our cash balance? So.
This is a question you may not be able to answer, and yet you might. As far as then, do some counties allocate funding to spend to build that up? I mean, purposely be building it up, not just looking at how you operate throughout the year and you have overages, so you add it to the general fund. But do they make a...
Yeah, I would say that's probably a pretty even split. Really, there are some counties that, yes, do build up cash balances in anticipation for a project. They know 5 years out that they've got a large project and that they're working on it, and they're building up cash balances, and they're budgeting to build up cash balances. Then I would say on the flip side, the other 50% of counties out there are probably adding to their cash balances, likely the same way that you are. They're underestimating their revenues in their budget, and they're overestimating their expenses in their budget. So budgeting is coming in a little bit better to them every year. There may be a surplus of a few $100,000 at the end of the year that helps them add to that cash balance. So it really probably is about a 50% split. And it could be that one county has always just done the conservative approach to budgeting, been able to, but then all of a sudden a project does come up. So for the next 4 or 5 years, their focus is putting money away towards that project and then using that. And if you guys have not had a surveillance call with Moody's in a while, which a surveillance call is that in between bonding, it's been multiple years, you haven't done anything, they're going to call and say, okay, let's check everything out, let's look at your audit, let's just have a conversation where you're at. On a surveillance call, they are going to ask if that fund balance is going up significantly, what are the plans for that? And you may tell them, well, we plan to spend it in 2 years because we've got projects coming. And they're okay with that because they in their mind, you've done some planning on that. And that's why that fund balance is, we'll say, going up where you don't intend to just maybe sit on that. So
that is where a comprehensive county planning strategic plan would benefit us, I think.
Absolutely.
Probably. I mean, we talked about it a little last year, but
yeah, I will tell you, with all of all of the public agencies that we represent, whether it's cities, counties, school districts, community colleges, strategic planning, I know that this county has always done a very good job of it. Strategic planning is very important because you're right, it identifies those things that are coming up that could be a lot of money. And how are we going to handle that, or how are we going to address that, and do we address that over the next few years, budgeting? And things like that. Again, we're in a very low interest rate market. So, those are the types of things that when we look at comprehensive plans, we have a couple of cities that are like, well, we're going to move a project up a year. The project is basically ready to go, and we're going to move it up a year because interest rates are low right now, and we're going to get the bonding locked in and done because interest rates are low. I would tell you, if I stood here last year, I would tell you that interest rates are much lower than I would have anticipated at this point in time. We really did see a downturn. Even the folks that sold bonds last spring got great interest rates, but they are higher than where we're at today. And I just didn't think that was possible, but it is. The other thing to consider is 7-8 years ago, when we were in this low of an interest rate market, we had no reinvestment rates. So you were basically getting $0 on your money in the bank. Today, though, because the Federal Reserve has moved on interest rates, you are getting some money on your reinvestments. So you are getting money on that cash. You are getting money on CDs. So that's a little bit different. We are back into that very low interest rate market, and you are getting cash on the money. So that's something also to consider, is what you could borrow at versus what you can invest those dollars for, and how that maybe works itself out to say, well, let's just keep the cash and let it accrue some interest, because borrowing rates are very, very low right now. That's definitely something that you should think about and consider.
Well, as you said, we have some departments that have done some excellent job at planning. I think when we look at those that have 5-year strategic plans, and maybe combining those will still help us look at them overall. But thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you. Anything else, board? Good. Thank
I
you.
don't think there's anything from the engineers department. I know we talked last year, about that project going over 3 different years, but I think that meets all the requirements unless you think of anything,
for the
right?
most part, it'll be two calendar years.
Two calendar.
And your 24 months of spend down from the IRS does start the day you receive the money. I should have mentioned also, you can reimburse yourself. So as long as you've done a public hearing and done a reimbursement resolution with that public hearing, you have every right to reimburse yourself. So you could start a project with cash if you were worried about the timing of 24 months. You could start a project with cash and intend to reimburse yourself. So the day you get the bond proceeds, you would replenish whatever cash you had used from whatever fund that may have been. So that may help out with the timing of that 24 months. You may borrow later than you thought, just because that gives you that full 24 months, which hopefully gets you through 2 calendar seasons of construction.
And without any penalty.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you all very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, James?
On the agenda, we have, I wanted to talk about, well, bonding was one, board agencies and capital. So, I don't know if anybody has a preference on what we start off with. But if you want to go through, capital, then we can go line item by line item and.
Does that sound capital over here?
Well,
Yeah.
I have some discussion starting points that include all of that. Yeah, I was pouring over the budget last night, sitting in front of the fire, drinking fine tequila, I might add, and I took some notes so I could keep myself on track. And based on the comments I heard from other supervisors, my discussion with James, after all the budget presentations, I just, and I got to give the past boards a lot of credit for putting us in the financial position where we are. We're at a stable point in it, and congratulations to many previous board members and the board members that are sitting here. This is only my second budget that I've been through with the county, but here are my starting points. I feel like maybe we should pump the brakes on the health clinic. That's a tremendous amount of asking. I need more time to digest the information myself. The taxes on my home are almost $5,000 annually. What I'd like to try to accomplish are the following while keeping my county tax portion relatively close to the dollar amount it is right now. I do like the addition of the courthouse security personnel, 2 deputies. Funding has been identified. We can do it. Add the county jail social worker. I still think the state could do more. I just saw on the news this morning that 1 in 5 school children in Iowa have a mental health illness. I have children with mental health differences, and getting pediatric therapy for those kids is incredibly difficult. People have asked me before, well, what do you think the state can do? The state can fund regional treatment facilities. That's what they can do. They're lacking. We need them. It's a good start, but there's so much more the state can do. When these kids turn 18, they don't magically overnight cure. They're not cured. These problems continue for the rest of their life. So this is a good start, but there's so much more that can be done by the state. Enhance our IT department with personnel. That's a need that we've had, and based on discussions I've heard, based on comments, that's something we can need to address. We may not even need to discuss it any further. Providing funding for security at Pinecrest. There's questions about it. At what level? I don't know. But, the comment I like to make is I'd like to see a Ken or a Nick just walking around out there on occasion. It seems like there's going to be many questions about the capital budget, so that might be a good area for us to go through, maybe even line by line, or at least department by department, because there I think it looks relatively good. However, are there areas there where we can trim back a little bit? To support the airport marketing venture. I do like the airport marketing venture for $125,000 that did come to us. It would be nice to have a discussion about that. Again, on the news just this morning, I see that Polk County ponied up $125,000 for security cameras in downtown Des Moines. Some may say, well, what does the county have to do with that? well, there's some things where I think the county can enhance or try to be a benefit for the greater good of all of our communities. Another discussion it appears we're going to have is in regard to agency funding request. At the last meeting, an amount we came to reluctantly by some members is $100,000. Some members think we shouldn't provide any funding whatsoever. I think we need to provide funding for some, but not for all. So it appears we need to discuss that. And I personally would like to achieve all of the previous while utilizing a certain amount of reserve funds, utilizing those funds in a mindful manner, as Maggie had just said we should do. Because I personally believe, and I think many members of this board agree, we have too much in our cash reserves. I don't think a municipality should be a savings account. We're taxing for that money, as Supervisor Little likes to say. I think we need to spend some of that down. However, we need to do it prudently and in a mindful manner. So those are the notes I took as starting points for our discussion today. I thought that would help guide us, and we could take her from there.
I'd say I agree with a lot of the points you made. I would push back on the health clinic. I believe that we have a fundamental mission that we are not fulfilling, a fundamental county service that we're not completely fulfilling right now, because we've got a clinic that's not private, is not handicapped accessible, and the STD rates in this county are not going down. They're going up. And I think that until we change how those services look, we're not going to make headway on those issues. And so that's why I think that they did put a lot of thought into what the proposal that they brought to us. That, public health, that's a county function, 101. That's one of our essential purposes. And so I'd like to see us have more discussion in this budget session about the merits of that proposal.
And I'm not against it. It's just a whole lot of information for me to digest, and I just want more time. That's why I'm saying pump the brakes.
It's a high dollar amount. It really was relatively thrown at the board fairly quick. There are some questions thrown out there that they really can't answer on the revenue part of it, plus the usage. Are the services that are going to be provided there, could they be provided elsewhere, like over at People's Clinic? How many people are actually going to use it? I think for the short time that this board, or most of us board, got involved in it, I think there's more information. It was brought up a year ago that they were thinking about that, but I never in 100 years thought they were talking to the tune of close to $1 million. So I think I tend to agree with Dan that maybe put that on hold, get some more information, and address that later on, maybe even next year. I think the operating budget, even though it doesn't reflect this year, I've talked to James a little bit, and I think the operating budget is going to kind of go sky high next year. I think it's going to be more than what it currently is this year through the restructuring. Now, whether that happens or not, I don't know.
You mean in the health department, or you mean the county overall?
Well, no, in the health department due to the clinic. So I personally just don't have enough information to make a decision on that large of it's probably one of our biggest expenditures within a department, not a building or anything. So I think I could tend to agree to maybe put brakes on that and address that another time. As far as the agencies, the money we put in there is really just a place marker there. We're not, as I indicated before, we do fund about $80,000 to community services with the three agencies, Operation Threshold, Jesse Cosby, and also Eastside EMA. So we've done that as long as I've been here, with a 3% increase every year. There's a few of the agencies that I would take a look at, but there's also some of them that I wouldn't. There was one, I think the request was $65,000 to pay for a person to be in the school district. it used to be our policy, and I know that's changed, but it used to be our policy, it was not for wages, it was for services. And this person was going to be in the school system, which is one of the higher taxing bodies in Blackhawk County. So I guess I wouldn't be in favor of paying for a position that's going to be in the school system.
I think, just to be clear, I think you're talking about the Riverview Center
No.
position? Okay.
No.
I was sure what.
And that
oh,
one
for the-
too,
the
I've
legal-
got
the legal aid
reservations
position.
on
Okay.
too, Chris. I think you must have been involved in that because that showed up when you did that Riverview. We never had that request before.
Well, I'm not on the board. I mean,
No, I understand that. I know that. And so I've got some reservations about that one too. But when you ask some of these agencies, are you getting any finances from other entities? And they say no. They come to the county. And but also you only see them once a year. I mean, they don't come in and give us periodic updates on how things are going. There's a few of them that do, but other ones, we never see them until it's budget time, and then they increase their request on the assumption that they'll get something out of it.
Well, we did stipulate that in the website application, though,
Yeah.
that they would come and do a report on it.
Yeah.
And if needed, anytime we call on them, that they would come as well.
We've funded, I think 4-H, I don't know, 4-H I can associate with county. And I don't know if anybody's been out there. I think some of us have been when they hold that, but it's pretty popular with the kids with the different things. So I personally could support 4-H because I think it associates with our county. And but we can go through them, and have a little consensus or a vote on each one and move on and be done with it.
But I will say, I mean, if Riverview Center came up since I've been on here, like I'm not. It's because I have been an advocate for victims of rape and sexual
And
assault.
I think we all are.
I'll continue to be, and it's they're one of the agencies that demonstrate that they are funded with Dubuque County, where they also work, and they did have multiple other entities involved in their funding. Unfortunately, through state cuts and everything, that there's a really great unmet need at the University of Northern Iowa, where there's a high likelihood that people will be the victims of sexual assault.
And the state cuts are always going to affect us up here at the county level, whether it be in funding for agencies. I think a good question the other day on the security, when the room was full with state people, was to look at them and say, hey, get hold of your state legislators here locally in Blackhawk County and see if they can't help out with some of this instead of putting it on our shoulders all the time.
Yeah, it's especially true for Pinecrest.
And so it's, it cost us a lot up there. And, thanks to the sheriff and the county attorney are going to have funding for the one sheriff. And I believe the board, we haven't had that discussion yet or approval, but the board has to approve the second deputy for the roaming up there. And but to me, Chris, not to fund an agency doesn't mean that I don't care about it and they don't do a good job. It's just that I place it in the overall picture of all the county, and we somewhat have to be fiscally responsible. And that list keeps growing every year, and I know the requests are out there, but like Supervisor White indicated, they all have boards. And the purpose of a lot of their boards are to go out and fundraise, and they do. But if I don't support an agency for funding, doesn't mean I don't care about them. I think they do an excellent job. So, but anyway, that's something that we'll have to go by, I imagine, individually on that
Yeah.
and see where the board's at.
We don't really need to do that today. We need to give you a number if we want to do a number for agencies, because we can always discuss what agencies or what we don't do, I guess.
Yeah, and see, I don't know what that number is, to be honest with you, Lynn. I mean, it could be more than what we've got, or it could be less, but
Well, you'd like to obviously do more, but that doesn't mean we want to use
Yeah.
the taxpayers' dollars for that. I agree.
the food bank upped their request this year, it looks like, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, 50,000, and it's a great organization, but boy, they sure get a lot of help throughout the community, and it's good for that, because I do a fine job over there, but
Most of the agencies have requested more over the years, and
I like the food program with you and I, you know.
Can we pull up this current year's request?
Yes.
This is not
Yep.
what we're looking at.
No, it's previous.
We could go through them if you want to, or what, Linda, you said you wanted to go through something else first?
Well, no, I was just thinking we need to, for the budget standpoint, we need to give James a number. If we're going to do anything, what that number's gonna be, and he can move on in that, and we can decide what agencies anytime.
How much you have
Yeah.
in there?
100,000. Now, it was, I mean, that was brought up as a placeholder.
Yeah.
And then Linda had also mentioned that to what she's speaking at now is if we just decide a dollar amount, we don't necessarily have to choose each individual agency. That's one strategy to go about it.
Yeah, but when would we do that then?
Well, you-
Right. I mean, that's kind of my point. Almost is we can do that. We can do that really at any point from now until the budget has to be approved in March. So we can do that at any point. But I guess, I mean,
Well, we
if
can-
we're here, we can
I
just
mean,
do it.
I don't mean we
Yes,
can't do it now, Tom, I just meant that.
Well, he says before March. We can do any of it before March, but I think we need to start making some
Yeah, I would-
decisions
Right.
I mean,
so
I would
we
say-
can move on.
Yeah, we put in a
The next
placeholder
one.
last week. I voted no because I thought it was too low.
Yeah.
But I'm clearly not going to win that fight. And so let's just go through it. Let's
I
see
think
where
we
everybody's
just
at on
need to
it.
start making some decisions and move on and saying, well, we can do it the next time. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had presentation by everybody.
We kind of went to funding of agencies where I think, to me, still a big, a major subject is the Health Wellness Center. And obviously, Dan's comment, I heard the pump the brakes, I hear Chris and all of us have an opinion on it. I agree with everyone that we probably didn't have all of the information needed to go forward in putting it into a tax year. And that's because it was a project that took a lot of time. Obviously, maybe the board and the staff probably knows it like the back of their hand. We don't. I look at this, I did a lot of thinking about it too without the tequila. But I said, but I did a lot of thinking about how we could, if this is a project that we would decide to go forward on, if there is agreement at some point in time that this makes a lot of sense for us, for our community, and what it can do for it. I looked at it much like we did the solar project. You know, the Alternative Energy Committee spent a lot of time on that. They brought the project to us. The board wasn't ready to go forward with that. And so we had to have that education process and really come on board, and I think there were several different ones of us that maybe didn't know the number, didn't know what that magic number was for what kind, you know, how many projects we want to do. Do we want to do a few? Do we want to do the courthouse, the jail? So there were a lot of discussions, and I know those that sat on that committee would attest to how many times we probably asked for another work session and a little more information, and I see this project much the same as that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information that we don't know yet that we'd be making a decision on, and to do it now is a little premature for us.
Right.
But that doesn't mean after we get that information that we wouldn't think that, hey, this makes so much sense for us, how can we not do it? And I don't know if 910,000 is the right amount. We think that is, but we've not seen the plans for that. Maybe there's something we'd like better or different, maybe something different with the building. I don't know. I know Nafisa couldn't be here today, so Patty, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I just thought there's a lot of information that we just haven't been fed yet to make a decision that, yes, let's tax the taxpayers or use reserves for $910,000 project. So that's what I would look at as just that we're in the start of this process and not in the final stages.
One of the concerns I had with the solar wasn't necessarily the solar project itself, because that was a huge dollar amount too. But I feel even though committees discuss that numerous times, whenever throughout the year, that any of those projects should end on our desk during the budget process, not in the middle of the year, and try to find funding for it. In this case here, it was identified we could take it out of the reserves. But I think items like that should land on this desk at budget time, you know, the recommendations. I know they work on it throughout the year, but the final say on it should always be at budget time, because we don't have a overall picture of the rest of the county. You know, maybe we needed that 1.2 million after all, and we couldn't do the solar rather than arbitrarily approving it, which essence we did, I think, passed a resolution months ago approving that, and that was my biggest concern, that should have been probably waited to this process here. Now, granted, a resolution that was approved by the board can also be reversed by the board, and I'm not saying I'm requesting that, but I'm just saying projects should be discussed at budget time and then just move on from there, and if they come throughout the year, then we just address them again at the next budget time. So,
Well, if that's the case, they did bring it to us during budget, it's just that we.
Yeah, we
needed
talked
and
about it
required
last
more
year,
information.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think when the Veterans Center came available and all that changed,
But there was no-
made the building available.
There's no plan in place that I can see. I haven't heard, I asked for information about what's your plan for this area? You know, bring me a plan. I haven't seen a thing brought back to us yet.
Well, that's what I mean, if there is,
So,
or, you know, maybe.
so
it
I
has
can
the
go out to the
details.
taxpayers and explain to them what this money's being spent for. Just like I talked about today, about the deputies walking around in here, we're throwing $240,000 right out that, if that window was open. You could break it with your tequila bottle, buddy, and then we could throw it out. Throwing $240,000 out that window. We're being reactionary to a situation that happened one time, and we're gonna spend money on it to try and solve it. There's deputies in the courtrooms when you have a serious trial going on, so they're already in place. We don't need to be spending money like that. Then I seen the plan for what, and I'm still waiting for an answer back from, I know it's not gonna affect us, but in a way it is, for the deputies to transport or mental health. Bob Lincoln hasn't got back with me on that, because I want some answers on that. I think we've got a pot of gold sitting out there, so that's what I said to James this morning, that there isn't a tree outside. There is a tree outside, but it doesn't have money on it, and we're talking about spending money that we don't need to be spending on things I don't think are necessary.
Okay. Well, I want to keep us on track here today, so could we maybe finish the discussion about the Public Health Center, and then we'll move on to agencies, and then move on to capital? Does that sound agreeable to everybody?
How would you like to finish it?
We've heard.
Well,
we've
so I
heard
think
from
we- I think-
two of us.
Yeah, I think we've
you've
heard
already
from most
said
folks
something,
on-
Linda, I know
Yep.
Greg, I guess, is.
I already said what I feel. I don't feel we should move forward on it. You don't have a plan in place.
Right, so-
And I don't know what duplication of services they might be talking about that are right over there. I think we got one hell of a place right across the street there. From when I never realized we had a mental, Dan was talking about kids' mental health. That's one of the few areas that's got a mental health person in place for children, is the People's Clinic. Did anybody know that?
I guess I knew that.
And so until I hear a plan on what they want to spend, put in that area out there, I won't give them a dime.
Are you looking for a consensus then, Chris, on that now, or?
Yeah, so we're making decisions, and so it sounds like the consensus of most folks on this board is that they want to wait and more time and more exploration into this.
Yes, it does.
One thing that I would like to bring up is, no now doesn't mean no ever.
No.
And if we're looking at doing a fund balance reduction, this doesn't prevent us from doing a budget amendment in December and putting that in our budget and start things January of 2021. So that's just something to keep in mind is
Basically the same thing we do with the solar, James.
right. I mean, we can
It's just-
definitely set up work sessions. We can talk about this clinic and get everybody on the same page, and do a budget amendment in December, and if that's what the board wants to do. So I guess I just want to put that tidbit out there.
So I guess
Yeah.
I would say it would be my intent to continue with those work sessions immediately following this budget season, because I don't want, I think that there's an unmet need in the community that this center is going to meet, and I want us to keep having those discussions, get everybody comfortable and on the same page here, because I do think it's a good project that they brought to us.
I agree.
Yeah,
All right. So,
that's good, yeah.
all right. Do we want to?
Need a vote on that?
Oh, so for now, it's not in the budget.
Correct.
so we removed that from this.
Yeah, and that was a fund balance, that was a direct fund balance reduction, so it doesn't affect tax askings, so the picture looks the same, so.
Yeah.
Let's go through do you want to go through capital or the agencies?
We can just
I
go
think
through the,
we've got the agencies up here.
yep. And forgive me, if you can't read anything, I can try to zoom in, and there's comments on the side, there's just a lot of
Is
information.
that all of them right there, or you got to move down?
No, the list goes down. I've actually totaled it down below there. That's the total. Obviously, we can cut that down. But we can start from the top. I don't know. I mean, we can go through it. We can make a decision on a dollar amount, or we can just decide on a dollar amount and try to reallocate.
I would propose are people fixed on this $100,000 basement that we put in last week?
I'm not fixed on anything because I'd rather might even see less than that. I know you want more, but I think the key thing is just go through each one of the requests and let the board make a decision, move on to the next one. Instead of having a solid dollar amount.
Okay.
Okay.
The first one is the UNI Food Foundation for $5,400.
Is that an increase from last year?
Yes,
I think for years we've given 5,000, haven't we?
yeah, that's
Yes.
been his request. Yeah.
It's a good program.
Yes, it is.
I think
It is.
everybody agrees. They show results and they're expanding it. I don't know if I would agree with the extra. I could agree to the 5,000 we give every year.
Yeah, they've stayed at 5,000 since FY13. So
They were supposed to be self-sustaining, I think, after
Yeah.
3
I know,
years or
but,
so, and that never happened.
You know, he's got a good argument. He really shows you the different things. I could support 5,000 for that program.
He does, and he utilizes the farmers and the local markets, food markets. And
Actually, it's kind of grown, the whole process.
So I think if we could just go through this and do a motion on each
Yeah.
one. So do we have a motion on the local foods?
I'll make that motion for $5,000.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second to fund the UNI local foods Greens to Grow program at $5,000. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
North Star Community Services, 40,000. Project name Raising the Roof. Replacing and repairing half of North Star's room on the main Waterloo building.
Are you on that board, Greg?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think we know excellent program, excellent services provided, but
I don't know about the roof
capital
part.
improvements.
Yeah,
to
I
the
don't
roof,
know about the roof
yeah,
part.
it's kind of this
Not for services.
same issues we run into.
Well, if they don't have the roof fixed, they don't have services. Let's just put it like that.
Well, that's with any
Sooner or later.
organization, though, but so then do you
Okay.
want to fund
I'm not gonna argue
buildings?
with you.
No,
I'm just saying.
You're right, I'm
But-
saying with staffing.
But I
There's,
think
there's a lot of other, there's Iowa State extensions in there. There's other services in there too. You
Yeah.
said on workforce development, you know that.
I think one of the they came to us is that it's often hard to find these types of dollars in other grant funding, which was the
But
point that they made in
again,
there.
you know, they do have a board, and the board's job, it sounds like they've already acquired X amount of dollars, so.
We've got, so.
I'm not in favor of
We've got
it.
$1 million worth of
Yeah.
stuff that needs to be done there. That's the
You want to take a
job.
vote?
Is that it?
I'll make a motion to provide $5,000.
All right, do we have a second on this motion? Hearing no second, do we have an alternative motion?
I'll make a
Very good.
motion that we don't fund.
I don't think we have to
can-
do anything.
Yeah, we can always come back to it if we want to.
I mean, we could. I'd rather we just get through this
Yeah.
and
See where we are.
NEI 3A,
well, let's get through it. So is because I thought I was hearing Craig make an argument for funding I mean, was there a motion that you wanted to make
No,
on that?
no. I've got a GoFundMe page set up for them. Not doing well, but that's beside the point.
Do you know even how much they've raised so far for their total project?
It
They told you a couple weeks ago,
It was quite a bit, I thought.
Yeah, that they were making progress.
but they got a lot of stuff that needs to be done up there, and they're very proactive. Most of the board members are proactive, just like any other board. That's why I have a problem supporting any of these, because they have boards in place, and that's what their job is.
Is this a new request, this
Well,
area?
North Star, isn't it?
No, the next one.
Oh, they've-
well, I was just back on North Star. If Supervisor Chalka was willing to make the $5,000 motion again, I would second that.
Well, it failed.
Nobody seconded it, so we didn't vote on it. But I was waiting for a higher amount. But
Well, you-
Okay, so what do you got?
$5,000 is the motion for North Star.
and I would second that. Any further discussion before we take a vote? All right. All's in favor, say aye. Yes. Aye. All's opposed.
Nay.
That motion fails. All right. NEIA.
I'm going to have to ask you to, I don't want a roll call every time, but if there
Yeah.
are no votes, I need to, was it Tom, Craig, and Linda? No?
Yeah. Is this the next one, new one?
NEI 3A is not new. Last year we provided $5,000 to them. Their request was $29,519, and this year it's $30,000. So it went up just slightly.
We gave 5 last year.
Correct.
We didn't fund them for several years.
No. See, a lot of these went through our solid waste monies,
Yeah,
but
they're used to it.
But then they, for some reason, they were one of them too that didn't apply every year. You know, we funded them a couple of years and then they didn't come back and apply for a couple of years.
Maybe we
Well,
hold off on that.
I think that's the year they changed leadership at 15. The executive director left and somebody else new took over.
I could support the 5,000 we gave them last year.
I'll make a motion that we allocate $5,000 for them.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to fund the NEIA at $5,000. Is there any further discussion? All right. All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All's opposed?
Okay.
Was
Maybe
that-
need roll- No, I was just looking to see.
Oh,
if
yeah,
we
let's
need
just do
roll
a roll call, please, Mr. Veeder.
Are you the only one that
I
said no?
think I was.
Okay, I heard you say something, I wasn't sure if that was a no vote.
No, I was just getting ready to say, did you want to do a roll call vote?
Okay.
That was all, no. That was it. Okay.
I'll be more distinct.
What do you got now?
Nay on all of them.
No, I heard you, I just wasn't sure what Linda was voting.
No,
So it passes with White voting.
I'm supportive of it.
Okay. Junior achievement, 15,000, and it looks like this is new.
Yeah, I didn't think we had them before. That's the one partnering with one of the community schools also.
Yep.
Business, community students, skills. You know, some of them programs, I think we fund through DCAT and Cedar Valley Promise.
You know, it's a great program. I support the public school system. I send kids to public school, but we also homeschool, and I, of course, continue to support the school system, but I can't support funding for this from the county.
This is a new one.
Well, there's a lot of needs in the community, but obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we give money to that. I'm not sure.
For the entrepreneurs.
All right. Is there anybody that wishes to make a motion on this? Well, I would make a motion for $5,000. I don't know if anyone will second it. All right. Hearing no second, I guess we'll move on to the next agency.
Northeast Iowa Food Bank, 45,000. This one is not new. We provided 30,000 last year.
I'll make a motion to provide 30,000 again.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to fund the Northeast Iowa Food Bank at $30,000.
Oh, it's food bank in this one?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought it was operation.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes.
Next, we have Eye of the Needle, 15,000. This one is also new. Provides transportation services, individuals needing transportation for medical services or going to school.
My concern with this request is possible duplication of services, so I can't support funding for this.
Right. Anybody else have any comments or any desire to make a motion?
I'll second it just for a vote. I know this,
Was there a motion?
or, oh, I thought there was, oh, no motion. Oh, never mind then, sorry. I was going to make a motion. I guess I could make the motion and see if it dies for lack of a second, but I'll make a motion, I would think, for maybe $5,000. And I was going to say, I know she is always at the emergency food and shelter meetings and has applied for two other organizations for funding. And according to Colleen Shipper, who's our county social services worker, does talk about a lot of good that she does in the community, so.
All right, do we have a second on Supervisor Leyland's motion?
I think it's just like the food, like Dan said, it's a duplication of service, just like the food bank. I question the food bank anymore with driving out to my home in Evansdale, going by the food bank when they have the free food on Thursdays, excess or whatever, Thursdays where they have a line out to the street. Then I drive down Lafayette and I get out to Evansdale, and a couple of churches got food pantries out there from the food bank. I can't support, it's hard to support stuff where they're able to go, sure they're saying they're trying to make it convenient for people, but that's why we started that area over there, was so that it was a one-stop shop, and it just failed to continue to put everything in one spot. I think there's too many things that we got here in this community that are duplication of services, and people just out from service to service getting what they need in excess.
Okay. Well, we have a motion from Supervisor Leyland. I will second that motion, funding the Eye of the Needle at $5,000. Have any further discussion before a vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Looks like the nays have it. The motion fails. The next agency.
Riverview for 35,000. This request is not new. However, we did not fund them last year or any previous year.
Again, I think of these new agencies, I think this is one of the most critical needs in our community that's not being met.
So does you and I do anything to support this, Chris?
UNI provides the office space for them.
That's all. And it's their kids that are being served. And like Tom said, that's school, that's monies, college monies and stuff like that. There should be some monies available through the college to help support that. It is a good program, I agree with you that.
It is, and this is a tough one, and as brutal as it is, this is the honest truth. Sometimes it's good for there to be competition amongst these nonprofits, because I know of one local nonprofit that's actually expanding services into this area, and they're not in front of us today asking for funding. So I'm torn on this. I support their mission, but I have a hard time supporting the amount of money they're asking for. So I will make a motion that we provide $5,000 in funding.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. I would support funding the full $35,000, but I don't think we have that support here today.
Would additional support help? I don't know that we'd have it for that as well, but I was going to say a little more than $5,000 because I do think there's a need. But my question was going to be, as far as their outreach efforts, are not just for UNI students, correct?
I believe in their presentation it was UNI students and people associated around the campus community.
Campus area.
Right.
That's what it's specifically for, it looks like, the campus.
Right. Oh,
Yeah. I'd like to see us do more. It sounds like there's not an appetite for it anyway, so
There's a motion on the
for
table.
Right.
5,000.
I mean, I have a desire to do more as well than the 5,000. I'm not hearing that from a majority today.
Yeah, no. I don't think there is.
All right, we have a motion and a second to fund Riverview Center at $5,000. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, next agency.
Operation Threshold. This request is for 20,000, and it looks like they requested that same dollar amount in FY20. We've provided 10,000 to them going back as FY15, nothing in FY14, and 12,500 in FY13.
I'll make a motion to provide $10,000 in funding.
I'll second.
Right. Again, I think they've demonstrated the strong need, especially after last winter's polar vortex, of the critical need for this utility assistance. But
And keep in mind, we do, through community services, fund them also.
yep. All right. Well, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. This is a motion to fund Operation Threshold at $10,000. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, the motion passes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Live the Valley Greater Cedar Valley Alliance Foundation. The request is for 29,000. Talent attraction, retention for businesses.
Thoughts from the board?
This is an initiative I support. I can't support the amount, so I'll make a motion to fund $5,000.
And I will say too that they did request an FY20, but we have not given them anything in the past. So
I don't think they came during budget. They came late.
okay.
I know I weigh this economic development. I think we probably all support that to some degree. That is what our community is about. But I know I kind of weighed this against the airport expansion or that marketing venture that they talked about. That's economic development, I thought as well, even though that was a little bit different than this proposal.
I think the argument in the past too on this one, we never funded it. We fund a lobbyist, which in essence kind of works towards some of our goals up there on economic development. So I don't think we've ever funded them, have we?
I don't know if we ever, I think we did years ago, like 30 years ago or something. I think the county was
don't
one
know.
of those. and-
I know we never belonged to them, and we just recently, in the last 10 years,
But not recently.
and I don't even know if we belong to them today, to be honest with you.
Well, I thought as the story went, when the commercial and industrial tax issue came up, and they were supporting it, obviously,
Oh,
from
that's
a
right.
business perspective.
That's right.
We had to hire a lobbyist to counter that, and so
Yeah.
we parted ways kind of at that
Yep, you're
time.
right.
But definitely a supporter of economic development. I guess we will need to discuss that initiative, that marketing initiative somewhat too.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, well, there is a motion for $5,000. Is there a second on this?
I'll make a second to take action on it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to fund the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance, Live the Valley, at $5,000 for the talent attraction and retention tool. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Yay.
All right, the ayes have it.
That work for you, Grant? Did you get us all?
They voted no,
Yep.
and it passed 3-2.
Yeah.
Next is 4-H, $7,530. That is for the an annual fair event held at the National Cattle Congress grounds.
What did we give them last year?
Nothing.
Nothing.
We gave them $2,000 in the past.
And they weren't a 501c3, so we need to really take a look at if we're going to change that on our website that we want to do other than 501c3.
We were gonna check, did anybody ever check on that and see what the difference?
I don't think we've got, and it didn't make sense to me when they said they were a C4.
Right.
Because it
No, you said
doesn't
that.
jive with their function,
No.
so.
Right.
But I knew they didn't provide the letter that they were a 501c3, but I think was the argument last year that they can tax, the
Well,
extension office
they-
can tax for.
They necessarily can't tax. The Iowa State Extension a few years ago through code was allowed to start taxing. To be honest with you, I don't know what the coalition between the 4-H and the Iowa State Extension is.
I know they
Is it
do.
an arm of the Iowa State Extension or what?
I know they provide staffing to help organize the extension
They're
does.
probably in the
And
same building.
They're in the same office.
There is,
But I don't think they tax for them now, but I don't know that. That's been what we've said all along.
Yeah, well, and my only issue now would be if we take action on it, and is it a 501c3 that we open ourselves up to? And Pete's not here, unfortunately.
Right.
But to say we're gonna do that for others, then we should have made that clear
Right.
on our.
So there's no question then on it, just move on and find out for the future.
Yes.
Well, yeah, we can,
Yeah.
I guess, ask, yeah.
yeah, because I really wonder if they misspoke, because a 501c4 is usually for a social welfare organization.
They were here that
Oftentimes
day. I
doing-
kind of wish we would have remembered to ask
Yeah,
them that.
yeah.
but-
Yeah, because he's the one that said it was 501c4 then,
Yeah.
so it was like, but I know the letter's not been provided in their application material.
Okay.
Well, actually,
So we can check
that's
our-
another organization I'd like to see them combined with the fair, with the cattle congress itself. They say it's not possible because of the blue ribbons and stuff, but I think they could provide the blue ribbons for them kids and do a better job of combining with the national cattle.
I think
Yeah, if I remember
California
their-
charges them for being out there.
They what?
I think they charge them for being out there, don't they?
I don't know, I need to-
right.
I think they pay to go out there.
If I remember
Yeah, that's
their,
right, because
No
one of the
fairgrounds.
problems that if they combined with them, they wouldn't.
if I remember their explanation last year, they weren't able to get Cal Congress to move early up enough in the year to keep the kids eligible to go through the state fair process.
Yeah, it's after the state fair.
Maybe,
We could do a motion contingent on clarifying their 501c4 status.
James, could you check on that? I mean, it's a simple phone call.
Yeah, we can check on it. I know Dana had looked into it. They couldn't provide 501c3 documents.
You would think they'd know
So-
what they are.
yeah. Well, it's-
Right.
C3 or C4,
They're gonna have
it's
it
a
to-
difference, right?
There's a different, one's
Yeah.
trade organizations,
Pull it
and
up
one's
online.
charitable,
It's-
contributed charitable.
501c4s are typically called social welfare organizations, oftentimes used by political groups that do advocacy around issues. They are tax exempt but not tax deductible.
I know Dana's been kind of on them to get them
Yeah.
the 501c3 documents,
trying.
and they unfortunately haven't been able to provide it.
Wait till next year then, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Move on for now, I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, moving on.
Sorry. Iowa legal aid, 60,000. More than 2,300 Blackhawk County residents stabilize their personal finances through free legal aid.
The total amount we're currently at with our individual votes is $60,000.
Correct.
I will make a motion to fund $20,000 for Iowa legal aid.
We have a motion. We have a second. I will second that motion. Any further discussion before a vote? All right. All in favor of funding Iowa legal aid at $20,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All is opposed?
Okay.
I believe the ayes have it.
That it, James?
For board agencies, yes.
All right, moving on to capital.
Well, you gonna review the library and some of those? or-
I think library we got to address.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
that's
got
right.
that, I think, on that list.
Yep.
We had it.
Yeah.
And Matt, I guess Matt too.
Yes. Yes, that was for 20,000. So you're at 80,000 right now.
80,000.
80,000 right now. Yeah.
Which one are we taking first?
We're gonna address the libraries first. Their request was 169,000.
12%.
Correct.
I'd make a motion to approve 3%.
I'll second it.
I think it's normally what we do. We're well above the
How much is 3?
limit.
3% would be 154,500. I don't know if you want to get that specific. You could do 154, 155. Again, it's up to you.
My motion's 3%. Second.
I second it.
Seems like we've kind of been trailing on that one. I mean, from what they wanted and said they really needed, obviously, like everybody comes to us, that the request is always on the heavier side, but where they were striving to be, it seems like if we met, I thought some incremental stages in there, it wouldn't be a big ask, but it seems like we've been.
Got a
going
new
up.
director, so I'm assuming that's where the 12% come from.
Oh,
I think-
need a new salary paid.
Well, no, I'm just saying he's a brand-new director, and I imagine he's probably similar to what you just said, Linda. You know, they look at the figures, and the library showed us that about every year anyway, along with a lot of other people, so.
Do you recall, and they showed us kind of their per capita ratio compared to other entities, and we were significantly lower.
But we're at
You
a
got
level
that
above
letter,
what's
James?
allowed or provided by code, I think.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
I said, did you have the letter to flash up there? I was gonna say,
I do have the letter. Unfortunately, I don't have it on me right now. I have it on my desk along with Met Transit.
the state's average was 1956, which we knew we weren't going to, but they said in order to beat that, the Blackhawk County would need to contract over 186,000 for services. We realize that would be a substantial increase for 1 year, but hope that you can increase the contract to at least 169,000, which would put them at the 1776 per capita. $7.76 per capita.
I think a lot of our departments would like to see a 12% increase in theirs, you know.
Oh, sure, I agree.
I just don't know if that's a pay increase or what that is, to be honest with you. We've asked over the years. There were some years we gave 0. I would say most of the years it was 3%.
Well, there was, yeah, like I say, the record since 2013, it looks like there was some that we stayed at the
Yeah.
28, but we typically went up about 4,000 or 5,000. So that's why I was asking, is 3%, 4,000 or 5,000, is that a repeat again of what we've done before?
Yeah, I can figure that out real quick if you'd.
Because if we could do a little better, I'd like to. I mean, it is the libraries, and they, in their presentation, stressed all the importance of the library in the communities in our rural areas, but
Yeah, I mean, last year you increased it just under, so it's 2.74% is
Yeah.
what you increased it last year. Again, probably just get that even number, and that's why I brought that up. Is, you know, you could do 3%, but it's kind of an off number.
How much is 3? Can you calculate 3% really quick?
Yeah, it should be 154.5 is what it should be, but. Yeah, 154.5.
So that is the motion that was on the floor? It was
Yep.
One at 100.
Motion on the floor is 3%.
All right. All right, we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Met Transit?
Met Transit is a 3% increase.
that what we did last year? I know they
I
came
can-
through us for an increase last year.
I can.
We had a
Yeah, just under 2.77%.
We had a presentation on that last year, and if you remember, that cost there is like 1/4 of what it costs to pick up the people.
Yeah. They're looking at rerouting, doing some different rerouting. That's good.
I don't know if it's on the RTC for the
Right,
country
that's-
picking up the people. I think it's more city.
Maybe.
This isn't city, this is
This is
rural.
Do we have a
good.
motion to approve the 3% funding increase?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to fund Met Transit at a 3% increase. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I abstain on this.
I,
I don't think there's any problem, but
no,
I abstained.
Use of this.
All right. I think that takes care of all the agencies, correct?
It does. I don't know what you guys have done in the past about Blackhawk Soil and Water, Quad County.
You know, those three
firefighters.
there, to be honest with you, I don't recall ever discussing them. The increase has been the same, isn't it?
Well, they just-
It's been the exact same
Yeah,
since
we've-
FY13.
My
So.
knowledge, we've never even addressed them. I don't even know.
To be clear, do we want to just do one motion to approve the three?
Yes.
yeah.
We
I'll
have
make
a-
that motion.
we have a mo-
Find out a little more.
Find out a little bit more
Yeah.
about him, and
Is
then,
that-
yeah, before we pay it. But,
Frank,
yeah.
Frank told us about the firefighters, and I'm not sure what that is, but obviously it can't be much at $250. So I don't know what, that's dues maybe? I don't know what it is.
Yeah, wouldn't hurt to know,
Yeah.
James.
It goes back a long ways, I know.
They never.
Is there a
Right.
motion?
Yeah, we did have a
Yes.
motion and a second.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, who's the second?
Craig did, I believe, right?
I thought you moved.
I moved.
Yeah, who's second?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
OC.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
That's it then, and then?
What-
Take a
All
short
right.
recess.
We can take a short recess, and I believe we'll move on to capital.
And we were just rolling good, too. Yeah.
Put the brakes on.
You know what it is, don't you?
One kidney.
No, I was gonna say that tequila coming out.
The key now.
That's that tequila worm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll have to
Fight for something, they just show everybody the paddy wagon.
Yeah.
Probably gonna be back when
All right, I hope everyone enjoyed their recess. It's the last one. So,
My bladder thanks.
all right. We'll bring this meeting of the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors back to order. I believe we're going to just begin our discussion on capital items.
Yes. Let me pull up the capital list here. To start off with capital, I do want to start off with IT. I know Kim is extremely busy doing a lot of other things, so if that's okay with the board, to start off with
Absolutely.
IT, and then that way Kim can kind of get moving. and-
Balancing, so we can go live.
So Kim, quick, where do we stand on getting a person, and have we got that?
I sent in the request
Online?
this morning. Oh,
Online yet?
no, I sent in the
Hire?
request, and so it'll be on the agenda next week
Oh, okay.
to actually do it, if
Well, I
one
heard
of
it
you
was on last
actually
week.
approves it.
Very good.
Okay.
This IT here,
Yep.
the total is what?
Yeah, let me change that quick here. The total is 288,256. If you remember when we were talking about IT, we had the needs and then the suggestions from the ICIT here. It's not letting me.
Yeah.
But all that's in that 288,
Correct.
okay? What furniture are you looking at, Kim?
Well, I need a chair for these chairs for these people to sit on, for one thing. And we have a few desks that aren't probably the best, so what I can get, at least for who we have hired, because,
So you're looking to equip, what, 2 offices?
yes, yes. And that was just a number that James and I came up with. But we need 3 new chairs for sure.
Well, you haven't probably gone through your list of capital items with this in itemizing, have you? Is there anything in there that special attention?
Just the fact that, that some of these things, like the virtual host servers, we really need to do that because they're of an age, and our whole virtual environment is based on those 3 servers. That is what monitors and controls the activity. These desktop replacements with Windows 10, and we've got all the county attorney's office got new desktops at the same time, so they're really at the point that they need to be replaced, so that's why I have them listed separately. The stuff on the top, like I said, is generally things that we do every year so that we don't have a big issue. The Tyler Content Management Form Module is a piece that would be added to that document, so if there was anything, I mean, I hate to say this, but that, could wait if need be. I mean, if we're to the point of making decisions, hard decisions, that's something that's really used by New World Systems. So it's an add-on to what they're using right now.
How old's the county attorneys?
They're all 5 years plus, so
Where
those
are they at?
machines.
Where are they at up there, desktops?
24,000.
Yeah, they all got laptops, but see, they take the laptops to court and then they use their desktops on their desks, so that's why I specifically listed them. They're they need to be replaced, they really do.
He graciously is, I think him and Tony are funding that one deputy for the courthouse security.
Yeah.
But you would think his funds that he has down here, they've done remodeling, putting up walls, doors, everything. You think that would be a target area for his funds. I mean, it's fund of his is there to help things within his office. You would think they would cover that. 24,000?
Yeah, I put $1,000 a piece. We're getting them in like 9 something, but
I mean, he has that money, and that's what it's there for, is that.
Well,
fund.
and I guess I'll just say this, we've tried to get IT infrastructure in our department, so it's a little easier to keep track of whose needs new when kind of thing.
Well, I don't
too.
care whose department it's in, I just care about the funding part of it.
Well, I haven't discussed this with Brian so, I mean, other than we talked about.
James, why don't you just run it by him?
Yeah.
I mean, they put walls up, buy furniture and doors and stuff. I don't know why they can't buy the computers with that money.
You know ballpark how much he has in that fund?
Last time we checked, it was right around 600,000.
I think you can afford computers.
Well, you can.
I know we tried to put computers in there, but there's no computers in any operating budget,
Just the engineer, I think, is the only one.
and they're
They're in a
CAD.
separate fund, that 002, and that's pretty much why that's that way.
Okay. But nobody else has anything in their operating?
They shouldn't,
Okay.
that I'm aware of anyway.
What about health department? I thought we bought computers last year out there.
Right, and they have a 5-year plan, and
Yeah.
Patty can attest to this, that they review it every year, so these are the things, and I called them just when James had asked what they were priorities, and Nafisa, emailed me back, and she felt they were all priorities, so.
Okay.
So that top part of your list, I think you said the other day, that's just what would be built in your annual budget.
Yes, what I would have
because that's
normally had in it,
The
yep,
things that we need to replace.
yep.
But they've cut quite a bit in the health department employee-wise, haven't they? Workstations.
Well, yes, she cut and now she's rebuilding.
Yeah, the school nurses program was the one that got cut.
I mean, to me, this all seems pretty standard and justified, and including the suggestions for the assessment. I think we're all like solid. I don't know if we want to go through, just approve it as one lot, or if there's things that people want to pull out of that for more information.
Out of that first part, or the 141,000?
No, I guess we could say for the first part.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess the only thing I wanted to see was if the county attorney paid for the desktops.
I agree.
I don't mind asking, I guess I'd like
It's
to,
not a huge amount, but it's $24,000.
but we don't know what comes from that, I guess. But if it's there, just laying there and he's got the money, I would think he would maybe.
The only question I would have is sustainability. If he's going to pull money from that fund to help pay for a deputy, and if these desktops are on a rotation, if those are now expected to come out of this account, and he brings up the idea that, excuse me, if he brings up the idea that the ability to pay is hindering his ability to collect revenue, I guess that would be my, right, I guess that would be my.
Is this on a rotation too, Kim?
Yes.
Computers you have in there?
Yep.
My thoughts are if that account is depleted, then it's our responsibility as a
Yeah.
board to decide how we pay for it.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah, which we,
Because even though the sheriff is paying for part of the deputy and also another position in there, he's also got different upgrades in the commissary and throughout there that he's also covering out of that fund that he stepped up to, so.
well,
It doesn't hurt to ask.
no, that's what I said, we can ask,
So-
certainly, James.
So it sounds like folks wish to table a decision. We table that decision on the desktops for the county attorney's whole Thursday work session.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the others.
I'm okay with the whole list, quite honestly, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
am
if you need it to ask
Yeah,
the question first.
it's not gonna hurt to ask the.
He can always pull it out
Yeah.
if he says, yeah, no problem, so
Yeah, so we're.
just make
okay.
that a stipulation in approving this.
So we're okay with it, with the question to be asked.
I am.
At least.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Does someone wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the top half of that spreadsheet for 141,700.
I can approve the bottom half too. I didn't see anything on there
Well, I
either.
thought Kim was looking at some of those things that
Yeah.
she wasn't gonna do, so.
Well, and we had a couple of these things, the Baumgar.
Wait.
It was something that we may look at waiting. The Meraki wireless, I think we could hold off on. And I did email the other counties that we talked about, Johnson, Lynn, and Polk, and I did not get back anything from them, and I just haven't had time to follow up with them again about the Office 365. So.
That's a tough one there.
Yeah.
Because once you start it, you gotta go, don't you?
Yep, once we make that commitment, we're pretty much on the road.
And we're not there yet.
Well, yeah.
It all falls on you to get it done.
Right,
until we have-
right. So I guess, I don't want to say that we don't want to have it. I'm just
No.
not sure if we're going to be ready to do it this year.
So which ones would you pull from that, Kim?
Well,
That would be the Office 365 annual amount of 66,000.
Oh, well, that was one that
And the bomb
I
guard.
thought was
in the
kind of-
Baumgar. Now, I guess there's a couple things here with this too, is whatever happens with ACEs, to make sure that we still have the tools. And Baumgar is one of the things that could be used for that remote desktop if we aren't able to use that tool. So I wish that we'd had this conversation. I mean, I know timing is everything, but,
But at that time, can't we take care of that if we have to go to Baumgart, if we pull it
yes,
out?
that's, and he made the comment about the other, and I can't even remember which, that if we did decide, I suppose it was the health department, if this is something that I don't put in the budget now, but if in December I say, hey, I think we're ready to go to 365, is this one of those budget amendment items?
Yeah,
Would
because
that
I
be
was gonna say, what's in
appropriate?
our IT fund?
Right.
What's in the current IT fund, and what if we have dedicated to come out of that yet this year?
Bet you're gonna see that you won't this fall start that 365.
I won't, or,
You would like to, though.
yeah.
This
I mean, like you said, my life will be a lot simpler when the tax administration is
Yeah.
moved over. So,
But still, time
I-
to get another
Yep,
person in.
yep,
to-
yep,
but
and there's a lot of
What
things
is the
to do.
balance? IT fund there was a balance.
722,187. That was when I checked it a few weeks ago. Since then, some Tyler equipment has pulled through for maybe 30.
So that's where that money would come out of then, wouldn't it?
So,
Yeah.
It could definitely come from there.
Well, and one of the things I might throw out there too is the beacon piece, I may want to do that sooner than July. So I was gonna ask James about the possibility of the budget amend, you know, if you do a budget amendment, if I couldn't get that going earlier, just because with the new tax administration, it's gonna be a little harder to put the data in the way that, to be on that website, so.
$30,000 is what you're talking about.
Right, right. But yes, we've got some major payments left, I think, before the end of the year, and I think Billy and I kind of worked out how much was left in there, but.
You can work them out with James out of the IT budget if it comes.
Does it make
Right.
sense to leave it all in, I would think, and
Well, and the other one that Kim and I had talked about was that Maroc.
Yeah, the
Wireless.
wireless, I definitely think we can wait till next year on that one. If I was gonna say anything, because the issues that we had when they were here that week, we have updated some firmware on there, and I think the wireless access points that we have right now really are working better than they were that week.
Right. So
So-
including everything but Meraki in? Is that really what we're looking at?
365.
Right.
So looking at moving Office 365 and the wireless, the lower portion is down to 60,728.
You good with that, Kim?
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, you know, if you guys are flexible enough to say, hey, the world's a happier place, we're getting projects done.
I think we
We're
can-
ready to go to Office
I think we can
365.
deal with that, can't we?
And we
Yeah.
can deal with it out of the
Yes.
IT budget.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's 90
These are all over.
90,000 that we're.
Waiting.
I mean,
here.
Get it, James?
Yeah, I mean that brings IT total to 202,456, and then you're cutting
Yeah.
85,8 down. So I think, frankly, I think that's a good dollar amount.
Yeah.
All right, would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion to fund the IT capital budget at $202,456. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Kim.
Why don't you keep conservation last?
Now we can just bring it
After lunch.
right from the top. We can bring Rory out here and he can talk about maintenance.
You know, this is, to me, a very good, maintenance is the lowest I've seen it in a long
Right.
time. And there's a good reason why, all the work we've done over the years. Is there any one thing in there, Rory, that we can delay?
Well, the one thing, no. To answer that.
Okay, let's move on.
The one thing I did want to talk about is the biggest item in there, and that's the HVAC replacement for JCS, and that really is a preventative maintenance. What we found with those systems over there, they are getting very difficult to get parts for. That amount is a little, each unit is not $10,000. What we did is we added an additional amount in there to do some balancing in that building, because we're running into some problems with how the offices are laid out in that building. If you happen to be at that end office and the thermostat's over here, for an example, it's very hard to regulate.
So you are gonna,
We're going to need to do some significant balancing in that building to get it a little more even throughout it.
they've got a lot of space heaters over there, which I'm not really
Right,
super
right.
happy about, but it's cold on one end, and
Yeah.
so you are gonna address that with a new HVAC. I think. that's
Yeah,
important.
and we're also looking at possibly taking one unit and relocating it into a different area too, which will give us some flexibility potentially on the ductwork for that building. So, like I said, the 70,000, the true number for just the physical equipment's closer to about 55. We took it to 70 to allow us to do some further evaluations and balancing and try to get that more unified as far as the flow in that building. So that's my biggest item. The new pickup, the next one for 48,000. literally, we've got a F-250 that we currently have our sander in. And over the last couple of years, we've really started to see that bed of that truck deteriorate to the point where we actually fabricated a stainless steel tray that this sander sits in. And I do think that that's helped prolong it somewhat, but we're still seeing some soft spots.
What's the miles on that truck?
On that, all of our F-250s are right around, well, I shouldn't say that. The highest mileage we have is 29,000, and that's on the truck that's located here at the courthouse. And then we've got one with 20, we've got one with 10. And
The one you want to replace, what's that have?
That particular one is actually our newest one, and that one has 11,000 miles on it. So we really want to try to preserve that because we want to be able to. We need to use those trucks for moving snow, and that particular truck does not have a plow, and that's why you'll see 2 snow plows on the list as well. So with the addition of the flatbed. That will free up the F-250 to put a plow on it. It'll also put a plow on the new flatbed, which that truck is sized appropriately enough to be able to handle.
So you're not getting rid of anything?
Well, the one that we're looking at is we have a 1-tonner. You may have seen it out here. It's a red pickup. It's kind of our odd. We try to keep that over at Pinecrest. Unfortunately, we're starting to see a lot of deterioration on the frame of that truck, so we don't like to travel a lot. We like to keep that at Pinecrest. We're actually running into some issues with the transmission.
How many miles?
Believe it or not, that is a 1999 with 12,000 miles on it. So it's when you're using these pickups for sand and moving snow, it is very hard on them.
Yeah, but they should last longer than that, right?
Yeah, well, this 1999 is a bit of a mystery as to why. We don't know if it's we just had a bad transmission in this unit. We've had it looked at several times, and it's actually kind of nickel and diming us. So if we were to choose to get rid of one or trade one in, we'd probably look at that. And it may just be better just to leave that one at Pinecrest and just use it just for that facility. No, our trucks have low miles on them, but they do get used, and moving snow is hard on them. So
Might be getting to the point where it was cheaper leaving it outside than bringing it in, and with all these trucks and plows and replacements and everything.
you mean as far as outsourcing?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we've actually cut our snow removal costs when I first came on board. If you remember, and I'm just going off from memory, but it was over $80,000 a year. That we were spending
Also
on
buying
contract.
trucks quicker than before.
Yeah, our last truck that we purchased was in 2014, so it's been.
So how many plows will this give you?
This will give us a total of. We'll have 4 workable F-250s for moving snow. And then our 5th one will be the new flatbed with the plow. So we'll have 5
don't you use
altogether.
that new thing we bought last year, the little
The Toolcat, yep.
tool cat?
Yep. Yep, and that's worked out really well. So downtown here, then that'll allow us to have our 3 trucks plus the Toolcat. And then over at Pinecrest, we'll also have the
So is there anything that you can do? I mean, are we just gonna keep buying trucks every 15,000 miles because they're rusted? Is there anything we could be doing, buying them different?
That's what we're doing with the flatbed is what's rusting out the F-250 is having that sander in the back of it. So we're hopeful with an aluminum flatbed trailer, placing that sander on there, that's gonna, and it's also got a wood top on it. So that's, I guess, our preventative maintenance approach to keeping our trucks in better shape is by not boxing it in with a sander.
Spraying those beds help with that.
We actually have every one of them sprayed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we've done that. We've actually replaced a bed. We had secondary roads a few years back. We cut out the bottom floor of one, and they replaced it for us. So we've made several attempts
How
to
often do
make
we
it
wash
better.
them?
Pardon me?
How often do we wash them?
Well, when it's super cold out, we have to be kind of careful, but we have access to the truck bay.
I was gonna say. we
Yeah.
just-
Yep.
All right. Do we have any further discussions on maintenance budget, capital budget?
Sorry, one more
go ahead.
thing. The HR transaction service window, we have actually taken another look at that. And in talking with Debbie, we feel that a better approach, given the nature of the HR department, would be a key fob and a camera. Similar to how we treat the collections in the attorney's area. So rather than cutting a hole in our wall and putting a service window, which we felt might impede a little bit on the privacy of that department, given the nature of that department, that if the employees in there had a view of the camera outside that door, then we felt that would provide the privacy and give the
They're
security.
gonna have to open the door to conduct business, where if you had the window, you wouldn't have to do that.
Yep, we, all the employees will eventually have badges if they don't already have
I'm
them.
not
so-
talking about employees, I'm talking about the outside people coming in.
Yeah.
Right, so the idea with the window then is to basically see who's approaching the door, and then you would buzz them in.
And if they look shady, you don't buzz them in.
Well, same thing with a window.
No, window, you can do transaction, you don't have to, they're not inside your building, you're gonna let them inside the office.
Yeah,
So a larger window, not the small window, larger.
we're
Right
looking
now
at
we have-
eliminating the
They're
window.
not gonna do a
altogether.
window at all, they're just gonna do a key fob with
Yeah.
With a camera.
Because there's a lot of times when you have employees that are sitting there that might feel uncomfortable if they're in the HR department speaking with Amanda or what have you. So having a big window there, we kind of felt that hurts the privacy.
So, but you're right, Tom, and I had that same question for Roy, because I thought there has to be, would there be some kind of a speaker thing? Because I don't want to just open the door for somebody and then find out, yeah, that was a problem, we shouldn't have opened the door. So there are some issues even with that I thought we were going to still be.
See, my intent on the window wasn't to conduct HR business. You'll do that like you do now to protect privacy. It was more for if they come for an application or they come for this or that, you can hand it through the window. But now you're gonna have to buzz them in through that door.
Yeah,
that's-
that seems, yeah,
It
doesn't seem
doesn't,
real welcoming.
yeah, I
People coming to
mean,
apply
sure, the
for jobs,
camera's
but-
nice to have right now all the time. And the key fob's nice to have, but you're gonna have to let them in the door and
Yeah. Well, and all we were looking at was just, given it's the HR department, maybe they just have to change their procedure. If we do put a window, maybe they meet with people in another room. But there's a lot of times where, if your supervisor or manager is walking by the HR department, I think it would be a little uncomfortable for the employee to know that, their manager or supervisor is seeing them in the HR department.
Unless we could put like a shade, that would be the other thing. I
Yeah.
don't know if you could put a blind there that we could open
Yeah.
and close.
Either way, the dollar amount, either way that we go, we're looking at about the same cost. So, I mean, we can further assess it, but as far as budget, the camera, the key fob, the window.
well, I think camera's always good, because you can have documented proof, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care one way or the other. I thought the idea of the window was safer for them, but if they wanna go the other way, I don't really care.
I think we also might, another issue is a lot of times what brings us out there is that kiosk for applying for jobs, which really doesn't even work half the time. I think we're thinking of maybe even just removing it or for it to get more use, actually, because it doesn't get a lot of uses, maybe just even relocating it where it can be seen more and by more people, and if anybody does need help, there'd be a lot of people around too. Like more in the lobby or something.
Brings me to an issue though, Roy, on the safety issue. Obviously, if we're looking at HR and making that more safe and secure area, what about your area where Abby's quite often alone and back in the
Yeah,
corner?
we are stuck. I mean, without the addition of an egress window or something like that, we really have no options. We do have heavy doors that we can shut. We have the camera system.
I thought we were gonna put a door in between the two departments.
It's a block wall. It just really wouldn't be. What we could look at is possibly doing a door for HR into the conference room, but I just don't think it would be. We'd gain a whole lot by doing it in between the shop and HR.
Do you have many incidents in that area? I know we've had people that come in and are upset with.
We
parking
do. I
tickets.
mean, we have just recently added a panic button in our office. We didn't have a panic button before.
That should help.
So we did add that. A lot of times, with parking tickets, which our guards are much better now, they used to send people down to our office if they wanted to argue a parking ticket, and we've asked them not to do that because on the ticket it says, here's what you need to do. You need to go to court and argue with the judge, not the maintenance department.
I heard you told him to come up and see the supervisors.
Yeah, or go see Tom. But so that's kind of helped. But we have had cases where somebody has come down to argue that, and just me coming around the corner, just another person has kind of de-escalated that.
When you're there, that works.
Yeah, if I'm there, yeah.
Chris, I'm all right with that. I'll make a motion to approve the money.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Don't let me ramble on anymore.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Next department. Is seconded by.
War is down.
We've already had a conversation about the health
Yeah.
clinic, but I don't think we actually took a vote, did we? I don't know if you want to take a vote. I don't know if you just want me to, I don't know, whatever you guys want to do.
We certainly can. We would like.
What do you want that vote to be?
Postpone it till, I mean,
Just-
that's kind of what I picked up from the board, but I don't want to make any assumptions.
Make a
so-
motion to delay it until the board has further knowledge, whatever.
We have a
I
motion.
think, Dan, you said something to that effect, didn't you?
I think we're all in favor of that, right?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
My motion is basically it's not going to happen under this budget here.
Oh, yeah,
Any-
okay.
I mean, we're going to have discussion, obviously.
Right.
I think I heard work sessions, or was that for
Yeah.
something else?
Yep.
Work sessions, it could be, I suppose, from reserves if we chose, but yeah.
Until they got more information, I can't see having work sessions unless they've really got some new information for us. If they're gonna bring information, they can bring it to us, and we can look it over, and then maybe have a work session, but it seems like we're just having work sessions to be having work sessions anymore.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. The ayes have it.
You want to do it now?
Yeah. I think I was clear about that. I felt the need was demonstrated, but motion passes.
Sheriff is next. I know Mark's here and he can talk about these capital items. Otherwise, they're really, all of these are on rotation from what Tony had communicated to me. None of these were, should be surprises, I guess, is what.
Well, the copier, I mean, it looks like it's more than one copier. One.
Just
How come
one.
that one's so expensive?
Good morning, Board. Mark Herbst.
Morning.
I don't stand in front of you very often. I'll do my best to answer these questions.
He's got 20,000 for a jail copier. He has copier in there every year.
Right.
And I think Sieges has copiers in there every year, but what's this one for 20,000?
So those are on a rotation. We have one up front that civil is dependent on. The one back in intake in the jail, obviously you know that the state went EDMS and paperless. That didn't reduce our paperless workload. It actually increases it. Those jails that were, or those copiers that we're replacing have right around $1 million or 1 million copies on the copier. That's a lot of copies. Those things are on all day long, every day. The one back in the jail runs 24/7, 365. All those arrests that are getting processed every weekend or through the night, all those copies get made for the inmate file and for the information for court.
The in-car video, we have that every year. I mean, don't we ever get caught up? And isn't the new software program coming into effect? Isn't that new equipment coming out of that or no?
The new
For
software.
what we just bonded for through the communication center?
You know, I'm not familiar with that, Tom.
But anyway,
Obviously, IT stuff, the in-car cameras and those computers. Law enforcement is more dependent on IT than ever before. The expectation for the video camera and the recording is That's just the way we do business now. Now, those computers that are in the car, the ones that are being replaced, I think that those are 7, 8, 9 years old. They've been in there quite a while. And again, the IT folks, they just seem to build in job security, meaning that these things eventually outdate themselves. If the officer can't run that, the driver's license requests, the warrants checks, all those happen in the cars and are contingent upon those computers being able to communicate with the state system.
Is that the notebook type hard one?
They are Panasonic,
That you can drop.
ruggedized
Yeah.
notebooks, laptops is what they are.
What do you do with the old ones? Trades them in?
I don't know what the plan is with those. Those are the fully ruggedized Panasonic CH31. We're going to the 54, which is a smaller, slimmer, and slightly cheaper version than that fully ruggedized one to have more impact within the money.
And every
We've
car
got-
has one.
Every car's got one. And I think that if we didn't go to that lesser expensive one, we could not do it within the money that's allotted in that budget. But it seems like the ones that we've switched over to the cheaper 54, the officers like it. They're even more prone to get that thing in and out of the car rather than the fully ruggedized one. And it works just as good.
It's relatively a small vehicle too. Cars or patrol car. I question the civil every year. I don't know why we have to roll the civil investigations over, but
So, like right now, the investigations, the vehicle that's going to be replaced with that, I think is right between 115 and 120 for mileage. By the time this budget takes effect, it's going to be after July. We'll go through the bidding process. That won't be until fall. That's going to be up in the neighborhood of probably 140. The civil vehicle, I think, is, if I'm correct on that, that's at 108 to 110 on mileage. These cars the civil cars get driven 2 shifts a day. A lot of that's in town mileage.
cars or SUVs.
Both of them are SUVs. Yeah.
Can you send us a list of all the vehicles you got and mileage on them?
Can I would?
List of all the vehicles over sitting in the parking lot that we've got?
Yes, and I've got that in a spreadsheet that I could send you that this afternoon with the mileage you said you wanted.
Yeah, civil and what.
So the last mileage I would have would be last month or the preceding
That's
month,
fine.
but that'll get you close enough. Or, you know what I mean, an idea where they're at.
Vest we have every year.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that one.
Motion approved.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion?
Just to be safe, since I'm a campaign for sheriff, I'm going to abstain to voting on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those
Thanks.
opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
We've already talked about IT. You really wanted to keep Mike last, we could skip him.
We asked everybody to kind of put them in an order. Did you do that?
Yep.
Right there.
So what's our total is 592?
With 160,000 being on the revenue side, you're looking at $432,800.
Okay.
And again, this is a larger capital request than we normally would have. But again, with 2 large projects in there, even though we're only asking for 60,000 for the Brandon Bridge, we don't have a road in very many of these, and so that $150,000 is a big chunk, but it's just vital to one of our most popular parks that we operate. And that road's been it's been on the list for about 12 years, and there was a seal coating in between, which got it by, and it still has a good base, but we're going to have to make a move at some point with that road, and that's why we're putting it in here. But it does, it pushes our capital quite largely. But then again, this is something that, this should be a 25 to 30-year fix. That I won't see it again, but somebody will down the road, obviously, so.
Mike,
Yeah.
let me run
But-
this by you.
Sure. Yeah.
When I look at the list, I'm good with it. I'm just wondering, the bottom three items, the doorway, the acoustic panels, and the siding.
He didn't go through his list with all of us anyway. I think we overlooked some of those items. We just kind of hit
Yeah.
yes. So
And as you can see on there, I mean, yeah, they're low on the priority list. When you asked to put them in line, those are low on the priority list.
Is that on the new part, that acoustic panels?
Yes.
Why, I mean, we put money in that already. I think the board give how much?
You guys ended up with about, total project, you guys were just under 7% of that total 3.1
Which
million.
was?
So, which is about, it was right around 200,000, something like that.
Why wasn't that part of the original build, those acoustic tiles?
We'd have to talk to the architect about that. That's one of the things that happens when you design a building. You would think that they would take those things into consideration, but they almost never do. And you find out after the fact that you've got high ceilings and you've got a large room there, and we've had some pretty significant meetings show up there, and it's a little hard to hear. The more bodies that are in there, the better, obviously. But yeah, that's the frustrating thing when you hire an architect and you pay all that kind of money, and they don't even think about those things. Those are always an afterthought. The Rotary Reserve Building was the same way when that was built. We walked in there when we finished and when it was finished, and you couldn't even have a two-person conversation, and we had to go in and put acoustic panels in there just to be able to hear. So anyway, you know.
The West Wing windows, that's the old part.
That's the old part, yep. And that was obviously not figured into the renovation part of the east wing. But those windows are in bad shape, and it's something that, once again, yeah, you can ask me what can come out of there. I can take those things out of there. They'll be back on the list next year again. They're eventually going to continue to fail even worse.
And I believe you did look at that during construction, but the price came back at like 80 something.
It was like 80,000 while we had the contractor on site. We said, hey, what could you do? And it was, they had us over a barrel, and we knew that was a ridiculous amount of money, so we just said, forget it.
And I know on the acoustic panels, we have most of our Watershed Management Authority meetings in that room. And I can testify that, yeah, it's a great, beautiful facility. It's just kind of lacking in this one spot that, unfortunately, I think no fault of you wasn't thought through. And I think it's just this one thing we can do to take this really stellar facility and make it 100%.
Yeah, we had a CSS meeting out there too, and it was horrible.
Yeah, it was very disappointing to us to walk in there and immediately have an issue. But
I can live with it. I mean, it just, we already give money there, and we're not going to continue to fund things there.
I can't, in the foreseeable future, I cannot see a lot that would come forward with that building, because I agree with you, Tom. I mean, I knew when we put these things in here that this would be questioned, and it's a legitimate question. I mean, we just have a $3.1 million new building there. But remember that there were decisions with the West Wing to leave it there, and that was decided on a lot of people with some emotion involved there. We've been told by people that it had been better to just redo the whole thing, but we didn't. And so, yeah, the West Wing has got some age to it. And
you know what your capital was last year? It seemed like your capital's been high every year.
Our capital last year was only about 220.
Was it?
Yep.
And it's what, 232 right now, James, with that?
432.
432, I mean.
Yep.
With the $150,000 road project.
That's still a lot in there.
but a road credit.
And then, there are other things too, and that's what I think you need to take a look at this. A lot of these, again, are going to be a very long time fix. The $45,000 for the electric at Hickory Hills, that's the final phase of that project. And that park, the electricity in that park should be taken care of for the next 40 to 50 years. The electricity that's there right now was put in the 70s. And it's made it this far, but we recognize that it was failing. So these are one-time things.
I think they're all good projects, Mike, and I think next year you can come back with a list double that size and justify that too. It's just,
I probably could.
how much, can we continue to do each year? And,
Yep.
and I know we've been very generous with conservation over the years, and
Well, it's also a department that raises a lot of revenue. That
it
covers
does,
for a lot
it
of
does.
projects that
I'm
we
not
don't
saying that.
cover for.
And when those facilities fail, our revenue will go down. There's no other way around it. I mean, we have to stay competitive. If we're going to compete for revenue, we have to stay competitive. And once again, you'll see that so many of these things in here, they involve facility maintenance and facility upkeep, and that will always be there. There's no other way to look at it. It will always be there. Something that's on the horizon, and you're right, Tom. It won't be next year, but it'll be the next fiscal year. But the whole parking lot and lane at the Rotary, it's got to have something done to it, and that's going to be quite expensive. And we've sat down with Ryan and Kathy, and we're kind of coordinating efforts there, and to see if we can kind of hold that cost down and cooperate together a little
What's
bit.
that bring in for revenue in a year?
The Rotary, $55,000 a year. If you want to if you throw the whole area in together, about another 25 to 30 for the haunted house. So that area brings in right around 85 to 90,000.
Basically, that'd be the only reason people are going down there is either for the rental of the Rotary
Rental
or
of-
the
Correct.
haunted house.
Correct. Yes.
Well, I'm comfortable with what you've presented. I don't know if there's a motion that someone would like to make.
I'll make a motion to accept the $432,800 for conservations, but capital items.
Is there a second? I would second that motion.
Okay.
We need, yeah.
That's saying that you're approving the full 592,800 with the
With the
understanding that there's
160.
going to be
Right.
160,000.
That's,
Yeah.
we need to make sure that that's on,
Yes.
fully on the expense side.
Yep.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, who seconded? Dan?
I second.
Chris?
Is there any further discussion? All right. Everyone in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
No.
All right. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next department, James.
DHS, they always keep 10,000 in their capital. This one's just to replace some broken desks. 10,000 to do that. And then the only thing after that is engineer and VA.
What did they
So
spend last year?
the DHS,
Yeah.
I
10,000.
think they said it's a rotation system.
Mhm.
They kind of use it, only do the worst, the bad ones.
Does that come off, granted, on that amortization that we have out there? Improvements, I think, or something.
They pay for part of that, yeah. Rory can tell you how the
Yeah.
breakdown is.
That's all right.
We have a
Oh, I'm
motion
sorry,
on.
We're talking about equipment, not space. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was talking about the furniture. I was told that falls under that.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
make a
they
motion.
pay a certain.
So see, the ads on and they pay.
Right.
I'll make a motion to accept their replacement of broken desk for $10,000 on rotation.
We have a motion.
DHS.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So move to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Next, we have the engineer.
Morning again, board.
Morning.
Ryan, the one thing, I have a quick question on
Yes.
this. Last year, we budgeted the doors. Kathy said she had an emergency out at the port shop or one of them, that she had to replace the door. What'd you do with the remainder of the money then?
So when we originally had that door item, I can't remember the exact number we initially put in the budget.
We budgeted for all the doors at Longfellow.
Yeah, so when we initially had it in for a budget request, I think it was for like 3 or 4 doors, and then in discussions with the board during capital, we were instructed to go forward with adding more doors to that item. In looking back at our budget, that additional money wasn't allocated in that money, so we still only had enough money for a few of the doors. And then with replacing one of the damaged doors this year, So far this fiscal, we've elected not to continue with the remainder of the doors.
So how many did we have? I thought we had budget at least 4 last year.
I would have to look back at the numbers.
I guess the only thing I'm saying is I'm not sure why we didn't replace what
Yeah, I mean,
money you had.
I think
because-
there was 4 or 5 initially last year, and then 10 would have done all of the buildings.
Because if they were bad enough last year, then have a request for budget, and here we are looking at them again this year, it makes you wonder, were they that bad after all?
Initially, looking back at it, when we had budgeted for 4 or 5, we were hoping to do 4 or 5 of them over a couple years. That way we didn't have one big influx of doors all at once that have to keep coming back with large
But I think the
expenditures.
board said, go ahead and do them all and be done with it.
Yep. And, yeah, so what, again, what had happened is the numbers just didn't get adjusted to reflect that in our budget. So the money wasn't there to do all 10 in this current fiscal, and we did have one that had gotten damaged, so that had come out of that.
You know what your capital was last year?
I don't know exactly what it was. I think we were over $1 million with
Yeah.
with the crane purchase.
You're looking for that, James, what their budget was.
Yep, I have it pulled up here. Capital, and then you have the capital construction. That $1 million, I would assume, would be the crane, or excuse me, the 1.6 for the capital construction, and the 1 million for capital. So right now they're looking at 841,000 for operating capital. So it's a decrease of 196,000.
All right, do we have any further questions, or is anybody prepared to make a motion?
Are these prioritized?
Yes, they are.
Pressure washer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you, I don't know if there's some of those you wanna go over again, Dan. I thought sometimes some of those operations. In particular.
You know, I'm all for the doors, because
Yeah.
they had me convinced last year. I just want to make sure they get done this year, so I don't see them on there next year.
It's just the number, that some of them did, just not the number that we.
Yeah,
were gonna do.
one of them was replaced, so it would be the remainder of the doors.
How many doors do we actually have left?
It's, how many on there? Well, the north shed has 4. Or
North Shed has 4, yes.
4, and then the west one is, that's the other 6. Yeah,
So we got budgeted 10, right?
yeah, and that would be the remainder.
Oh, good.
And they ended up costing us more than what we thought. Is that the reason, or what? That we didn't do?
Apparently, we didn't allocate the money after we agreed to.
Probably,
Yeah, the
Error.
the
All
budget,
of it.
yeah, the budget just didn't end up getting adjusted for the additional doors.
So we budgeted for what, 4?
Yeah, I believe so.
Then you used one on that.
We ended up
damaged
using
door.
one of them.
Is that something that we can replace 3 doors and then put 7 in here? I would have to look at those numbers as well, but
Yeah, that's something
You mean
guess
if they
I
had the
didn't-
money
I-
in their budget?
right. I mean, in theory, if you had budgeted 4, I didn't realize that was not the case. But if you have budgeted 4 and you replace 1, depending on, I mean, in theory, we should have enough money for 3.
It's definitely something we can look at. I mean,
Yeah.
coming to the end of this current fiscal, we can see where our capital budget
Right.
is.
Yeah.
I think it's
I don't know if that matters, but I'm
It's a
just,
shell game.
Really, it
Well,
is.
it
It- I
reverts
mean-
back into road use money, so
Yeah.
it's, you know, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
No, just something to correct.
I'll make a motion to approve $841,000.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Hey,
The ayes have it.
last but not least, we have the VA.
Oh, yeah.
Since our last meeting, we've talked about putting it in the FY20 budget. But now I don't necessarily know where that stands. Thinking that they might be able to allocate that money to invest into security for the VA. I don't necessarily know where those conversations are.
I'd like to see him get the car.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him get it yet before the fiscal year.
But I think he said he'd only have, he thought like maybe $15,000 is what he was estimating he'd have at the end of the year. And he wouldn't know till the end of the year, so he didn't want to get the car till later, so that kind of put a.
The 15,000 would be new to me. The last time I spoke to Yolando, he was confident that the full 25 could be fit in this year. So I guess I haven't had
I'll
any
have it. Yeah, 'cause
conversations
I
with
talked
him.
at the last VA meeting, and
Okay.
I'll have him get in touch with you.
Okay.
So we're not gonna budget anything?
Well, the vehicle, we'll have to budget the vehicle if he doesn't have money in this year.
Right.
I thought he said he was confident he had the money.
No,
That was the conversation I had with him, but that was since, I guess, is
That
what
was
I'm
the
kind of
early
what I'm
conversation.
gathering right now is
Yeah.
that he might not.
So we
Plus, I
just
don't know.
budget for the new fiscal year
And I
then?
think so.
Yep. He can always change it if he changes his mind, but yeah.
So once they're allocated the money, it's their money.
No, I meant between we do that.
I don't have a problem because I think they need the car, but it's just that we're trying to get it to them earlier.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna be fiscal year, but
Well,
it
that's
is what
he
it
said.
is.
He wouldn't know until the end of the year, so then you're looking June or July.
There's cars sitting out there that they could use. Health department's always got cars available.
So you're not.
Get one
the
from them
car
all the
period.
time.
Oh. Okay.
I'm in
So-
favor of getting it for them, but
Get that rusty old truck where he's gotten good.
Is there someone who would like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion for the VA vehicle, for
I'll
25,000.
second it or whatever.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All's opposed? All right, I believe that takes care of capital.
It does take care of capital.
All right. So
The-
we'd move on to, what would you like to move on to next?
Well, honestly, we're other than bonding.
Yeah, we've got the bonding question. We've got,
On the road.
right,
We got bonding, and then the only other thing that I do want to mention is on Thursday, really to finish almost everything else, or to finish everything up, we're looking at Pinecrest Security, and we're meeting tomorrow, right after the department head meeting. So that that recommendation will come to you on Thursday, and we can kind of discuss that. Other than that, it's really, we're about done. Along with Thursday, I'm going to update with updating these capital, update the board agency dollar amounts, the library dollar amounts. Kind of tail those back, and we'll know exactly where we're at on Thursday. So that should really take care of everything. But other than that, like I said, it's really just bonding and what we want to do for Grundy Road.
well, I think since folks seem open to considering or continuing a dialogue about the public health center, which we would possibly be using reserve funding for, that at these rates it makes sense to bond the $4 million, since we did do a major bridge project last year without doing any bonding. We spent $2 million from reserves on the Cedar Wapsie Bridge, and so I think this is a good year to bond for the pavement of Grundy Road.
And what's the construction season again on this?
So we'll be doing that project in two different phases. The first phase would let this December, and that would be the grading portion. So all the grading, subdrain work, culvert replacements, essentially widening the road, putting new gravel down on the road to kind of build the base for paving. We'd let that sit over the winter. It's kind of nice to get a good freeze-thaw cycle on that. If we do have any issues, we can address those before paving. So then in calendar 21, we'd come in with a paving project to do
So we'll finish
paving,
it
shouldering.
21.
Calendar 21, yes.
So we got 2 years on the bond.
So that would be actually 12 months. So the timeline that we're looking at, we would sell bonds late this fall, and then it sounds like we would do the work this fall, moving into winter, and then it would actually be completed within 12 months of receiving our funds. So we're going to be well within that 2-year time frame.
First phase. So by the
key-
time we're getting to the end of that second construction season, it would be later in that period. But if we're selling bonds October, November of this calendar year,
it would give us 2 full construction seasons.
But
to get the
we
work
also
done.
have that option of paying for it with the reserves and reimbursing that back through the bond
If you want
sale.
to start early.
Correct.
So, I mean, if,
Correct.
the money's always gonna be there, so.
Now, the one thing that we've kind of discussed prior is, you know, there's caps for bonding in each calendar year, so that it is a little bit more beneficial to us if something were to come up to knock it out in 2020 than it is to do the first part of 21 or, you know, but again, I don't foresee any bonding requirements moving forward, especially, you know, to the $10 million size. But again, that's just something to keep in mind is, you know, there's calendar requirements as well.
Make a motion to approve board issue $4 million for the, is it the Grundy
Grundy Road, yes.
Road project?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been
We'll let
moved.
James figure out when we're gonna do it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Other than Pinecrest Security on Thursday, that's it.
Did we ever, did the board ever take action on approving that deputy?
We put it in, we included it in the
Well,
budget.
it's in the budget, but did we ever approve
For
it?
salaries and
I don't know,
benefits.
did we approve it the other day? You didn't like us voting on everything.
Well, I mean, it's in there. I mean, it's a new position.
I think it's probably
What,
good if we
vote on it?
vote on it.
It is in the budget right now,
Correct.
the one that's gonna be taxed for.
Correct.
I guess since we all are aware of that, it's not necessary for us to vote on it.
Unless you have an objection
Unless you've
to
got
it.
somebody to object.
to it.
Oh, yeah, you have.
I think we should have
I
a,
don't
think
think we need it. I think we're throwing money away. We're not being fiscally responsible with money doing that.
Right.
It was a one-time
It's unfortunate.
incident. You're yelling fire where there was a little incident.
Well, that was one that kind of brought it to the forefront, Craig. It's too bad you weren't here, but I just said they talk about multiple incidents and near misses and.
This
things
is a
that have
courthouse.
happened.
There's always going to be incidents. You can listen to the TV every night. There's incidents in courthouses all the time with situations. That's what the deputies are in the courtrooms for. We're wasting money, wasting taxpayers' money, putting more deputies in the courthouse.
I was-
And you're going to cause more problems, I believe, because there's a number of people out there with mental health issues that'll see us challenged to that when they see it. I'm here every day. When I'm here, when they first put these deputies walking around in here, the first thing people are saying, "What's going on? You know, what's going on?" I said, "It's just for security purposes." "Well, you got security down there." Well, I agree with you. We got security down there, and they're doing their job. And I don't agree with putting security out there unless it would just be somebody on a rotating basis to walk through and do a check every so often. We have the ability, like we're talking about downstairs. This is a courthouse. It's supposed to be open to the public. We're talking about putting little windows in. You're taking taking everything away from the public, you know, because it was a couple little incidents.
Mark, I've noticed over the years that the courts do have days that they have no courts and the judges aren't here. Did I understand the sheriff to say that those two deputies would still be in the courthouse?
No, that's not correct.
Which would seem like a waste.
Yeah, that would be a waste of manpower. When the court would be closed, that utility squad that we talked about last week a little bit, they do a lot of other functions other than just taking in.
So these two people that we're adding are gonna be considered part of that 6-man utility squad.
That's correct.
So we already had guidelines in place on if there is nothing going on here.
They're going
There's
to be
quite a few
taking
times, you know, they don't have courts up there.
Yeah.
So they will not be in the courthouse at that time.
No, well, I'm sorry. If the court is simply closed, if the courthouse is closed, no, they're not going to be
No,
here.
I'm talking about court.
Yeah, so if there's simply no court, no, they're going to be over here. Now, days that the courthouse is closed or there's not much going on, they can be allocated to, you know, expedite or transfer the prisoners around the state, taking them to and from prison. They're going to be functioning now that same utility
No,
squad.
I meant if the courthouse is open
Yep.
and there's no courts going on.
We will have-
Judges are gone for a week or whatever.
We will have staff here.
They'll still be here.
That's correct.
That's where you get into that, you know, kind of a these thing, but.
Yeah.
I support it. I was concerned about courthouse security before I even came onto the board, and I'm more concerned about it since I'm on the board.
I know after hearing all of those people comment, though, I said my thought was that we were very fortunate that there wasn't an injury or something worse that came of that event.
Okay,
And
so I'll
it
take
was
it a
really,
step further. We're talking about this, but we don't give a damn about our employees
We do.
walking to their cars every night. That we've been kicking the can down the road for about 4 or 5 years on a damn parking lot, and now we're talking about adding security that we do not need. End of story.
well, you're entitled to your opinion, but I just meant from a security
I
standpoint.
think my opinion can be backed by a lot of information. Go back and check like I said, one thing happened, so we're yelling bloody murder.
Well, it wasn't one thing, though. They
Yes,
did
it
bring up
was.
many
Tell
things.
me when it's happened before.
There were several incidents they talked about that day. that
Hey,
were-
who's they?
The group that was
Oh,
here,
that-
like the 20, 25 people that came in to talk, and 10 or 15 of them that talked, that they were several incidents. So it was just because that one was
Like
the
I
worst.
said, I'm here on a daily basis. I don't see anything happening that, you know, we've got a lot of things we could be spending money on. A parking lot for our employees rather than deputies walking around with nothing to do.
Keep in mind too that there's a lot of courthouses in the state of Iowa that don't have near the security we've got right now, the machine. There's a lot of them don't have the machine
Yeah, very true.
compared to Blackhawks. So, you know, I guess it's each county's decision. And there are some counties that have deputies right at the door. I believe Lynn
Right.
County or,
Dubuque,
so there's a
I think
mixed
is
bag
one.
of everything
Yeah, right.
out there, but Blackhawk County has been one of the leaders, I think, with the machine, and I think our old machine went to another county, didn't it, Rory?
Years ago, yeah.
So, and that thing's about ready to be replaced too.
All right, I think, kind of folks to know where folks are at. Do we want to make a motion? We have a motion on this?
Is that what you were looking for, is having a motion on the position?
This is just for the courthouse.
Yeah,
Right.
this is just the
Yes.
courthouse one.
In the one position, the other one's funded already.
I think that'd be nice to just kind of make sure that that's kind of all cleared up.
So you have it, yeah. All right, I'll make a motion that the Blackhawk County participate or partner with the other organizations of the county attorney as well as the sheriff's office for the usage of 2 individuals, which we will only pay for one.
So are we gonna relook at this on a yearly basis to see that it's a waste of money? Or are we
Well,
just gonna put it in place and just live with it?
I think we
I
look at
think
the whole
we always
budget
look
every
at
year,
it.
so.
I think the board can always
Yeah.
have.
Always look at it, yeah.
Look at the thing.
Or 6 months down the road?
Mark, how many deputies do we have on the road for shift?
On the road, there's 6.
6?
Yeah, 6 for the big area we got, and we're worried about putting 2 in the courthouse.
Well, that's 6 total staffing. 2 of them are always usually on days off.
I think
It's a
the
rotation.
reasoning on the 2, if I'm wrong, is for scheduling vacation, time off and things like that. You'd have to buddy them up or something.
There was concern about response time. If there's one over here, we've talked about the 3-minute response time, so that the person does have backup. And then secondly, is we need to have a measure put in place so that they're, when training, vacations, that type of thing take place, that
But if an individual's in the jail going to court, they'll always have a deputy with them automatically, correct?
That's correct. So, and kind of what Craig touched on before, the deputies that are currently in the courtroom, they're not eligible, or they cannot leave because they've got an in-custody inmate.
Yeah, they stay right there.
Right, and if they were to leave that inmate, the inmate would probably appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't think the judge would.
Well, did they have, the sheriff, do you know if he's discussed, apparently from what I understood that day, the judge did not want any deputy in that courtroom.
Oh,
I think that the county attorney had discussed that with the judge. The judge, I think, suggested that the deputies weren't required. The county attorney went out, kind of stuck his neck out, called him and had him outside the courtroom. Because he had a hunch that,
And I think
And I-
Judge Stigler admitted that in retrospect, he would have wanted the deputies in there based on what happened.
And I have a personal experience that things do get crazy here. In 2009, when I still lived downtown here at East 9th and Mulberry, somebody escaped from the court from their hearing here and ended up breaking into my house while I was home working. And so stuff goes crazy, things happen, things have been happening for a long time. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to take action this year.
and I think that was that a juvenile that was being,
He didn't look like a juvenile to me.
Oh, okay.
He is. I mean, what happened was, this was before I put a peephole in that door. He was banging on the door. I assumed it was one of the neighborhood kids because I couldn't see out the crescent window, and he was crouched down. And so I opened the door, and he comes barreling in, and they eventually had to tase him in my front hall. When the police tracked him down, I had to shove him out of the door to flag the cops down. And so stuff goes crazy, and if it spills out over here, it spills out into the neighborhoods, and it happened in my house. You look at the police report.
But yeah, motion.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Who seconded that? And Linda made the motion.
Lengthy one.
I'll second it. The motion is second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Since it's a specific issue
Oh,
directly
you were
related
gonna
to the
abstain.
sheriff's department, I'm going
Right.
to abstain.
All right. I believe the motion did pass. We had 3. So.
Okay. Craig, you voted no.
Yes, sir.
Tom?
Yes.
All right, so I believe that concludes everything we were going to do today on the budget. We were going to come back on Thursday for a work session, Thursday morning. The security committee is going to have a final meeting tomorrow. We wanted to basically have the most accurate information that we could on what our recommendation around Pinecrest would be, so we have everything for the full board to discuss, and so that's why we're having one additional meeting tomorrow to flush those issues
I
out.
think other than that question there, that's all you got.
Yeah, I think that's the final question.
Can that wait till Tuesday to come back to the board, or does it need to be done by Thursday?
No, it needs to be done by Thursday.
He's got
Yep.
a date set.
Gonna have a
Yeah,
machine,
I
that's
got-
the only thing we're gonna tackle.
Right.
Publications and that kind of thing. I
He
mean, I
probably
gotta,
could review everything with us and tell us some
Right, yeah.
scenarios of where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
Then we'll wanna change it,
Well,
and vote again,
um,
that's fine.
we don't want to change it if we don't.
yeah,
want to.
and again, unless you really wanted to put a placeholder in there, I mean, I would recommend just, meeting on Thursday and get it done with. And then
I'd
that
like
way-
to, at that time, then give us the final numbers.
Yeah,
where we're
absolutely.
at as far as
You
an
bet.
increase
Right.
from last year's budget,
We're gonna-
and what that affects in urban, rural,
You bet.
residential, and ag.
Yes,
Mhm.
for sure.
You bet.
So we know exactly, because it looks like it's not too far off from the original budget. So I think we need to know then Thursday where we stand.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm looking at it right, I mean, you're, without Pinecrest being in there, I mean, you're looking at 130,000 decrease from what we had put in there before. So,
Not much.
no.
No.
But we weren't asking too much more than last
No.
year.
No.
So,
Anyway, that's the figures I'd like to see Thursday.
All right, any further discussion today on the budget? Any reports or information from the board? I would introduce